All right. I think we are live. I hope we are at least. Anyways, what is going on, everybody? It's Randall Thor 19, the man with the million, back again with another episode, the final episode of 2020 for Xbox Two. And with me, as always, is my bestie, one of the best guys I know out here in these YouTube, Twitter streets. The one and only Jez Corden of Windows Central. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, well, bless you, buddy. I'm just glad this year's drawing to a close, really. But we want to know how you've been doing, man.
Yeah, you know what?
Been?
I got to apologize. We haven't done the show in a couple weeks, and that's entirely my fault. I've been pretty much non-existent on social media for at least a week, and I know you were probably getting very frustrated and tired answering all of people's DMs and questions about what was going on. And I even got people saying, "Are you done with the podcast?" Like, people were like, "Are you and Jez over? Is it donezo? Is the Xbox 2 finished?" And I'm just like, "No, dude. Like, I am just not in. I just like." So what happened was, not this past week, but the week before, it was just one of those things where I was just busy. I was busy. Like, something came up on Friday, and I couldn't do the show. And then you couldn't do it on Saturday. And then we were planning on doing it on Sunday, and something came up again, and I couldn't do it, right? So it happens. But then, on Monday, I just started getting this massive migraine headache, right? Which I get from time to time, maybe a couple times a month. But I would get one every single day within like an hour of waking up. Just my head would just be splitting. And if anybody gets migraine headaches, you know exactly what that's like. Like, when I get them that bad, I can't even think. Like, let alone do a podcast or, make videos. Like, all I want to do is just lay in a dark room and just sleep it off. And normally it's like, okay, I get a headache and, it's gone 6 hours later. But like it happened every single day. And about on Wednesday, I got a sore throat. So I was dealing with like sore throat and this like intense migraine headache that just wouldn't go away. And I basically just did nothing, just like laying in my room with the lights off, just trying to just taking sleeping pills, just trying to fall asleep and just sleep it away. Last couple days it felt a lot better. Haven't had a headache, sore throat's gone. So I'm feeling pretty good. So yeah, we decided we had to do the podcast. We couldn't because Christmas this Friday, right? We can't do a podcast on Christmas, right? So, we could, but we're not. We're not doing podcast on Christmas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like we can't do the podcast because it's Christmas, and the following week is New Year's. I'm not going to do a podcast on New Year's, so it was like, well, we got to do the show because we've missed a couple weeks, and there's things to talk about. Like, Perfect Dark has been revealed, Jez. 343 came out and was like, yo, Halo's coming fall of 2021, full year delay. CD Projekt Red came out and put out their game and basically torpedoed their entire reputation and turned the video game industry up on its head. Like, stuff happened that we needed to talk about that couldn't wait until 2021. So we're like, all right, let's do the podcast on Monday, see how I feel, and I feel pretty good. And, haven't put out a video in over a week, which is, I don't like doing. I like to have at least a couple videos a week. But yeah, just, when you just have headaches and you're just sick and you're just laying in bed, just waiting for it to go away, I had no desire to do anything. Honest to God's truth, didn't care that I wasn't putting out videos, wasn't checking Twitter. I just didn't. I had no desire to do anything. So, but everything's good. I know some people asked if I had corona. But no. I'm pretty good with social distancing, and I don't go anywhere Like I buy all my stuff from Amazon if I need anything. I don't like I haven't met anybody that like you know what I mean? Like I'm very careful when it comes to all that stuff, and be almost virtually impossible for me to have it. So it was just one of those things where, just the headaches and that sore throat, and that was it. Um, but yeah, I mean, but I appreciate each and every one of you guys reaching out to me on Twitter, sending messages and asking if it was, if I was okay. And I really appreciate that. It does make me feel like, people care. So thank you for that.
Man. I got so many messages about you.
Yeah,
it's just like,
I
need to tell them.
It was just, I mean, like people were like, well, is he still alive? And like, well, no, I would talk to Jez, and I would talk to a couple of my other friends who would ask me stuff, but like I was just not in the mood to get on and talk about Xbox or talk about the games I've been playing or any of this stuff. Like I was just like, I'm done. Like I have no desire. Like what I did was I would watch like Netflix. I will say, if you guys haven't checked out Alice in Borderland yet, I watched that yesterday or 2 days ago. I binged the entire thing in one sitting. Fantastic. I was telling Jez about it before we started the show. And then Jez went on like a 30-minute like rant about The Mandalorian, which he will not spoil because we're not going to do that. Yes. But like Jez was trying to tell me like what season 3 is going to be in season 4 and what's all this means because I've never seen Clone Wars. And he was just so excited. He was just like so excited to talk about Mandalorian.
Dude, I am so hyped on Star Wars right now. Like after the movies, man, I was like, man, Disney doesn't have a clue about what Star Wars is, and Dave Filoni comes and he's just like, no, guys, I got this, and he just carries the whole franchise on his back. He's gonna need surgery after carrying all of that on his back for all this time. But yeah, no spoilers. But dudes and dudettes, go and watch The Mandalorian. It is so good. And I have friends who don't even like Star Wars who enjoy The Mandalorian. So,
dude, and after you're done watching Star Wars, watch Alice in Borderland. It's about a show where 3 friends are in Tokyo, and then somehow everybody in Tokyo disappears, and they're alone. But then late at night, they're like the games begin. And they have to go compete in these games where, like, if you lose, you die, essentially. And you have to constantly compete in these ridiculous, over-the-top games. And if you don't compete in them, you die. It's pretty ridiculous, and it's pretty awesome. Like, I was just like, oh, next episode, please, because I need to see how this plays out. It was fantastic. But, anyways, enough of that. We do have a lot here to talk about. But before we get into all these fantastic topics, I figured we'd talk a little bit at what we've been playing. The game you're seeing on screen, I think I have the game running. Yeah, I do. Okay, so it's up. It's Call to Sea, which I will talk about in a minute. And I figured we obviously going to be talking about Cyberpunk, but Jez has actually played Cyberpunk and wrote a review on it. Gave it a 5 out of 5, and he basically says it's the best game of the generation. He played it on PC. Without getting any of the specifics of the whole situation of what happened, just give us some of your thoughts on the actual game itself, since you finished it for review.
Well, this was an interesting one because, as it's now well documented, there were no Xbox codes for this game. There were none. And that's actually fairly common. Like, oftentimes, like, a dev will be like, yeah, we've got PC codes, but we don't have Xbox codes. And I don't know why. I've always just assumed that it was because Microsoft takes longer to issue codes than Steam does, or than, and also because CD Projekt Red, they own GOG. And I thought, well, obviously they can produce codes more easily because they own GOG. So, goodoldgames.com or whatever. And I thought, well, nothing suspicious there, I guess, because this happens all the time. So I play it on PC, and yeah, there's bugs. But I was thinking, Skyrim had bugs, Fallout has bugs. It's to be expected. And I felt like none of the bugs I encountered really affected how I felt about the game. Like, The story delivery is just magic. All the, all the character acting is just on another level. There's so much motion capture in the game. Like every scene feels handcrafted. Every area is detailed and interesting. And I was just having so much fun playing as like a hacker, and I was just hiding in a corner, hacking all the enemies through the subnet and doing all this stuff in like this really gorgeous world that's well established and runs great on my relatively modest gaming laptop. And then I started hearing reports. Xbox One version doesn't run well. I don't even own an Xbox One anymore. And then like PC version, PS4 version doesn't run well. And then like you start seeing some of the videos of those versions, and it's like, hang on a sec. Didn't CD Projekt Red tell investors they were surprised how well the game ran on back end?
Yeah. The quote was like they ran surprisingly well.
Yeah. So like they're saying all this stuff, they run surprisingly well, and I expected there to be bugs. Witcher 3 had bugs. Games that are this complicated tend to have bugs or glitches or whatever. But like some of the bugs and performance issues and texture problems and all the sort of stuff that we were seeing in the past gen versions is just far beyond anything I experienced on PC. Like the worst bug that I had on PC was this bug where when an enemy died, his gun floated in the air. But they fixed that before launch. So, I noted that in my review. Like I had this bug where guns were floating in the air, but they fixed that before launch. Like they said they were going to fix that bug. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But then, man, since then, it's just been such a mess, First, like they were saying, they told without consulting Sony or Microsoft, they said go and get a refund for the game if you don't like it. Sony and Microsoft were like, hang on a sec, we haven't got a system in place for this, and Sony were clearly not very happy with that because they pulled the game entirely. Microsoft dropped a warning label: if you play the game on Xbox One, you might encounter additional issues or whatever. And man, what a mismanagement. It just kind of shows like CD Projekt Red hasn't shipped that many games, and they certainly haven't shipped that many games at this level. And the whole sort of way they handled this whole clusterfuck, well, you can't call it anything else, kind of speaks to their immaturity as a company, like trying to speak for Sony and Microsoft. Can you imagine Microsoft trying to do that? Like go to Sony for a refund if you don't like Minecraft Dungeons, for example. It just wouldn't happen. Like, because they're a more mature company and they understand how these things work. But man, what a mess. Because and I'm just sort of sitting there like in this euphoria, having completed the game and loving every minute of it, and then going to start a second save immediately, which I rarely do these days. I was literally sitting there after playing and thinking, man, they just don't make them like that anymore. I haven't felt that connected to characters since Mass Effect 2, And, without spoiling or anything, I was just like, every character arc was satisfying in some way. and then alas, the nightmare unfurled that most people who played it, on the past gen systems at least, we're just having this awful experience. So
yeah, that's the thing, and we'll go more in depth about the Cyberpunk stuff, like all the details surrounding it, because it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. Like I just don't know who thought any of this stuff was a good idea, but I guess money, greed, like whatever you want to call it, need to hit that date, lying to investors, potential class action lawsuits. Like there's just, what were they thinking? But I mean, as for the game itself, you really do think like once everything's ironed out, and like people are already saying on console, like after the two hot fixes, like 1.05, that the game is in a much better state. Although I haven't started playing it yet because I'm just gonna wait for the next gen version, like the true Series X version. I don't really, like, and I know like a couple of my buddies are like, it's not gonna really look any better. I'm like, well, It may not. I'm sure it'll run better. It might probably look better. But a
It'll
lot
be
of
more polished.
the bugs, it'll be a much more polished experience than playing it right now. So it was like, I can wait. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And hopefully by waiting by the time I play the game sometime in next year, the game's in a much better state and I enjoy it much more because of it. So
Yeah, the I mean, it's almost like less about the game at this point because I love the game. It's like it's easily up there with my top 3 games of the gen. Like for my personal enjoyment, I love the whole aesthetic. I love the gameplay. I love these kind of games like immersive sim. I love Prey. I love Deus Ex Human Revolution. I love the original Deus Ex. And to me, this felt like the sort of what they would have done with the original Deus Ex had they the technology and resources. Like it really did feel like a love letter to the original Deus Ex in some ways, at least. And man, it's almost devastating to think about all the developers who they poured their heart and souls into this game for the last few years, like or 3 or 4 years, however long it's been in development. I mean, I know it was announced a long time ago, but it was like it hasn't been in development for as long as it's been announced. And to watch like your bosses and your execs make such a pig's ear of it, as we say in Britain, make a mess of it, basically.
Pig's ear, never heard of that before.
Yeah, that's a very British saying. They make a pig's ear of it. It means to make a mess of it. They make such a mess of it. It must be devastating, And I have no idea why they did it, because they could have just like. It's almost like they got afraid of their own meme and their own because they delayed it twice in a short space of time. Why didn't they just grow a pair last summer and say, look, we need to delay this game to 2021. We want it to be the experience you guys deserve. COVID's really wreaked havoc on our pipeline. Like I read in one article that some CD Projekt Red dev said that and I'm paraphrasing heavily here because I can't remember the source, but they were like, the issues that previously took minutes to fix ended up taking weeks because the pipelines are so deeply impacted by the shift to working from home, And why didn't they just do what Halo did and say, okay, this needs more time in the oven? Why did they think they could get away with lying to their shareholders? Why did they think that that it's a good business idea to tell all of your fans and stuff that the game runs surprisingly well on previous gen consoles when clearly it doesn't? Where did the weak link in this chain appear? Is it the lack of Q&A testing? If all of your devs are playing on PC, then maybe they were probably thinking, yeah, it doesn't run so bad, But surely you have at least some of them testing on Xbox One and PS4 especially, surely, because that's potentially where the second biggest user base for your game's going to be after PC. So why the hell didn't they test it more strenuously? And then even then, if they did test it, why did they make the decision to push it out in the way it was? I just can't believe it.
It's mind-boggling.
It's the erosion of trust in their brand. It's brand damage. Even my mom, for God's sake, right? She watched a news report on the BBC about Cyberpunk when it got pulled from PlayStation, and my mom was like, "Isn't that the game you reviewed?" So even my mom knows about this whole debacle while I'm in the UK for Christmas and stuff. It's just been crazy, But I just think about the devs, man. It's the devs at the end of the day who I feel bad for the most, and how they've sort of almost. I mean, it's not hyperbole to say that they've been betrayed by the execs who made these decisions, who didn't have the balls to delay it longer, and let it be a bit more polished, at least on those systems, or just delay the past gen versions, Release it on if you need the cash flow, maybe just release it on PC or something, while the most polished version. But it's just so weird how this whole thing played out. Yeah. I don't know.
And we'll be talking about it more because there's some things that need to be discussed about it. But I want to thank T. Tucker and Georgie for the super chat. Georgie says, how big of a relief is 343 taking after 2077? I don't think they're, like, relieved. I more think, like, they're probably happy that they got a full year of, development extension, essentially. And
I think it's almost like a vindication of that strategy. Like, you could say, like, Halo Infinite is, before people would have said, like, oh my god, Halo Infinite's delayed for a whole year. That's crazy. But after what happened with Cyberpunk, maybe they'll think twice about saying that. And
yeah,
like,
but
oh,
I
maybe
think
it actually is a good thing.
yeah, but we'll talk about this later too when we talk about Halo. But like, I think Cyberpunk should have been delayed for a different reason than Halo's being delayed, though, right? But we'll talk about that in a minute. And Drunken Ninja says this game will be fine in the future. They have a great game underneath and all. And that's what like my buddy Colt and my buddy Fonz have been saying, that like the games, and that's what you said, like the game underneath everything, underneath the memes and underneath all the bugs, there's a really great game there. And that the developers who made it should feel proud, but like obviously the management team at CD Projekt Red kind of just threw the game and everything under the bus, and now, the game has become a joke, like a complete joke. But we'll talk about that. So I finished Immortals Fenyx Rising, which I think I clocked in at like 30 hours, and I really enjoyed it. I eventually gave up on doing everything that the game offered, like all the different markers on the maps. Like in true typical Ubisoft fashion, it was like there was just so much of it, and it was like I didn't really feel like my character was like, do I really need this next level of a god ability or this next skill, or do I need another chunk of life because I had like done so much already? So I pretty much just kind of mainlined the quests, and I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was fun. I thought the combat was really engaging. Playing it on like normal and then kind of bumping it up to hard just to see how a lot of the stuff felt. And I hope like maybe there's a sequel or more DLC, because the game plays well and it's 60 frames, open world. Like that's why so far like I'm really impressed with this generation. And I know a lot of people getting the whole console war stuff about which console is like the better of the two or the most powerful. But like for me, like every game I played on both consoles have been 60 frames, and it's been amazing. Like something like this Immortals Fenyx Rising would have been 30 frames and wouldn't have been the same experience. But like you get on, you play it at 60 frames, it's all smooth. It's like this is exactly what I wanted from the Series X. So I really did enjoy that. And then the game that is on screen playing is called The Sea, which is on Xbox and PC. It's also in Game Pass Day 1. It's kind of like a first-person adventure puzzle game, very similar to Myst. Basically, your husband is missing. You have an illness that he kind of went searching for, ended up on this island, and now you're trying to find out what happened to him and what happened to the expedition. And it's very Lovecraftian, Jez. There's a very much otherworldly aspect to it as you kind of figure out the puzzles, and it's all very symbol based. A lot of it's trying because when you come up to certain objects and you kind of press a button to inspect them, she'll say something, and the voice acting is really good in the game, but she'll mark it down in the journal, and it's all kind of matching up symbols and in orders and stuff. But I actually had a great time playing it. It's about 6 chapters long. I would say it's about a 5 to 6 hour game, depending on how long you get stuck on some of the puzzles. The visuals look great. It doesn't run particularly too well, and I saw some people in chat saying, "Well, I know where you got your migraine from," because some people really do kind of get sick playing this game. Because chapter 2, when you come to like the beach, the frame rate fluctuates, but I didn't really have that big of an issue with the frame rate drops. As I think most of you guys know, I have a CX, which comes with variable refresh rate, and I wasn't really affected by the frame rate drops that happens in the beginning of the game, and that more or less irons itself out later. But I thought for because they don't really make these games that much anymore, and for a game that has this tight of a story with some really, really interesting puzzles and a couple hard puzzles that were like actually make you think, Like, it's not just one of those where it's like, even if you find the solutions in your journals, like, you still kind of gotta sit there and figure it out for yourself. And the story, like I said, with the Lovecraftian themes going on there, like, I was engaged from, the minute I started playing it till when I finished it. So it's available now. You can play it in Game Pass, play it on PC. It's got pretty good reviews. I definitely recommend it if you like those kind of first-person myth-style puzzle games. So, and I played a little bit of the Gears Hivebusters DLC, Jez, which a lot of people are going on about.
Yeah, I've only heard good things about Hivebusters. People saying it's gorgeous and nice little free DLC. Like, what are your early impressions?
I mean, I'm not that far into it. I've only played for maybe 20 minutes or so, but it does look ridiculous. Like, it looks like, I didn't think it could look better than Gears 5 already did, right? Because Gears 5 is one of the best looking games of the generation, right? 60 frames, dynamic 4K, and all that stuff. But man, the DLC just kind of, it's like the Coalition with the shackles of maybe essentially a lot of the Gears formula, like, thrown off. Well, introducing a lot more color into the Gears games than really ever before. It seems like something that was designed with Series X in mind. It's a stunning looking game, and it runs like flawlessly at 60 frames. And I'm very interested in seeing how they go for Gears 6, because we both assume that's the game they're working on next, right? They had 3 years to turn around Gears 5 from Gears 4, right? I think Gears 4 came out in 2016, and then Gears 5 came out in 2019. I expect to probably be given more time with, Rod leaving and the changing of leadership. Maybe some stuff needs to be changed with the multiplayer to make it more accessible. I think they're probably, and considering that now Xbox has 23 first-party studios after the Bethesda acquisition, comes around, they don't necessarily need Gears as often as they used to. So I think they probably give, the Coalition, instead of 3 years, 4 years to make a Gear 6. And
that'd be sweet.
Make it, just do some, like, subtle changes or maybe bigger changes in line with, like, what this DLC offers. But it does look incredible. It's like, and like, there was that article where a lot of people got upset about, where I think VG247 said, hey, the Coalition just low-key dropped the best looking Xbox Series X game, Gears 5 Hivebusters. And honestly, like, it's very hard to disagree with that. Like,
I'm gonna download it right now.
Like, comparing it to Cyberpunk, which doesn't really look good, right? But then it's a back and pack game, so we'll wait and see what the next gen version looks like. Valhalla looks great. What are some other really, like, great looking games on Series X?
Legion looked great until they implemented ray tracing.
You said Legion looked great until they did that. Master Chief Collection looks great with the update. Forza Horizon 4 looks great. Kind of blanking on some of the other games that launched with the system, but like Assassin's Creed Valhalla at 60 frames looks amazing. But like Gears just kind of blows that away. I think it really blows everything else away. They
are like Unreal Engine. They are masters of that engine, the Coalition.
Yeah, and it's going to be like, and if they move, Gears 6 into Unreal Engine 5, man, this is all done with Unreal Engine 4. But you can make a case that they're better than Epic at it. Probably not, but like, they're probably the best when it comes to that.
Man, what's the last photorealistic game that Epic made? I mean, it was like the Unreal Tournament reboot that flopped. Like, most people don't even know about it. There was like a free-to-play Unreal Tournament reboot that nobody played.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to because they have Fortnite, so they don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But it is impressive. Just when you think it's like, man, can games look any better? Here comes, even on PlayStation, like Insomniac with they put out another patch for Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2018 that introduced ray tracing in a 60 frames mode, which is fantastic. And then, the Coalition drops this, and this is just like, this is DLC. This is just a 3-hour expansion, and it looks better than pretty much anything else on the console. And this is what? Not even year one. This is month 2 of the month 1 of the console release. And this is where we're at with the game. This looking like, what is Gears 6 going to look like when it comes out? And I would imagine 2023, right? What is that game going to look like on Unreal Engine 5? What are the games that already look great now? What are those games going to look like in a few years? Because it happens every single generation. There are some launch games that look really good, but then a lot of launch games where people are like, this doesn't really feel like next gen. But then you get games towards the end of the generation which look ridiculous, and you're like, oh yeah, this happens every single time. Like, you go back and you look at the 360, you're like, yeah, Perfect Dark. A lot of these launch games didn't really look good, but then by the end, you were having stuff like Tomb Raider and the BioShock Infinite and Dead Spaces and stuff. Like, you were looking like, Grand Theft Auto 4s, right? You were looking at like games that pushed the envelope for what the 360 and PS3 could do, and then same for this gen. Like, you look at like what started like Nax and the Killzones, get more comfortable with the system. So it's gonna be, like seeing Hivebusters and how it plays and what it looks like with all the like the color they infused into it, like, makes me a lot more excited than I was previously for whatever they do next with Gear 6. Honestly,
I think Gears always has to sort of, I don't know, they always feel like, at least, they have to follow this formula of, it's got to be, downtown, it's got to be the destroyed places and whatever. I think Gears 5 was strongest when they left those places, and we got to see like the desert a bit, and we got to see like, mountains and stuff like that. And they went a little bit further afield with Hivebusters because it's set on like a jungle island, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the thing. So it's like, I've always been beating the drum that, the Coalition should do a new IP, which I still think they should do whenever they feel, ready to move on from the franchise. But, they got some it seems like they got some tricks up on their sleeves. And maybe if they're just given more time to flesh out what they want to do with Gears, instead of like, basically being like, we need you. Because let's be honest, like, Xbox needed Gears this generation because they really didn't have anything else. A lot of their studios were in longer productions. They didn't really have any deals that they could rely on. The first party studio, there was only like a few studios. And like, 343 was working on Halo Infinite. It was just like, we need you. Like, Xbox really relied heavily on Turn 10, Playground and Gear and the Coalition to keep those games coming. And I think, some of it suffered for it, because when you only have 2 years or 3 years to turn around the game, there's not much there you can kind of change or implement stuff. But now
I think the Coalition deserves way more credit for what they've done, and in supporting Xbox insofar as the exclusives effort and stuff like that. They've squeezed a lot of juice out of Gears.
Yeah, they sure have.
And good job of it, I think, considering, like you say, considering the circumstances. So I would love to see, like, if they do shelve Gears for a while, let Gears 6 have a 4-year dev cycle. Let it go out on a big high so that people like feel nostalgic for when it comes back and stuff. Because, I do think there's opportunity to make that franchise into something more. It's sort of like outlived its own formula. Like, if you go back and play Gears of War Ultimate, like the original, like, or even the actual 360 game, the formula's barely changed. It's very barely changed since all the way back then. And they were exploring new things with Jack and the abilities and stuff like that, which was a really cool direction to go in. And then like the vehicular travel and stuff like that. But even Gears 1 had like a vehicle section, So it's like even that wasn't a huge leap. I think they could do something cool with Gears. I would honestly love to see like what a first-person Gears would look like. I know that's sacrilegious, but maybe they need to go sacrilegious to like make it, bring it into another dimension or something. Like Resident Evil went first-person and it was better for it, I think. And then like they have like third-person game, first-person game. I'd love to see what a spin-off Gears would look like, made by id Software, or in partnership with id Software, first person chainsawing, and yeah, you could argue maybe we got Doom for that, but like a slower, more sort of plodding version of Doom that was Gears. I don't know. I feel like there's things they could still do with it, but they need to sort of broaden what Gears means as an IP, because it's yeah, it's sort of constrained, but alas, we're sort of constrained.
Well, I mean,
We sort of
I'm
squeeze
definitely
other
going to
people out of
finish.
it, so.
I'm definitely going to finish up the DLC, and we'll obviously talk about our full thoughts whenever we do the next podcast. Which, like at this point, it's looking like January 8th. For the Friday after New Year's. So, Isma Easy says, "Hey, playing Cyberpunk on my i7 9700 RTX 2070 Super, and I got 25 crashes." Corrupt files, lost my first character, weird glitches with a lot of side missions, bug not allowing me to continue. Well, that sounds like not a fun experience. Sorry to hear that.
Well, I played for 35 hours on a pre-release early build of the game, which had more bugs, and I didn't get a single crash. Or I think I got one crash, but I think I blamed BattleNet for updating on that crash. But I barely got any crashes. And I didn't have any glitches that were graphical and stuff like that. So part of me wonders if like the rush to patch the game might be introducing even more errors. I don't know.
Maybe. And the friendly neighborhood Blue Shell says, Cyberpunk tried to be the first great next-gen game, but was hit by a Blue Shell instead. That's pretty funny. That's pretty good. Artemis says, Rand, Demon Souls are Hivebusters visually? Well, that's a very interesting question. Hivebusters. Well, you see, Demon Souls, you can revert to a visual mode, right? You can basically be like, I want quality, and I'll sacrifice the frames. So in that mode, it does look it's one of the best looking games right now. Obviously, like there is no quality mode for Gears, and I don't think it needs it because 60 frames is what it should be aiming for. And they both are doing things a little bit differently. That's a really tough question, honestly, because there's some parts of Demon Souls where I was really impressed. Where I was, when I was playing with Luca, I was like, God damn, look how good this game looks. And then when I was playing like Hivebusters, I'd be like, holy shit, this looks freaking incredible. So I guess it just, I don't know. It really, really depends. I would say they're both freaking amazing, but they both are going for a different thing. I think Gears.
Does this mean we stop? Does this mean we stop using Rise as the benchmark for graphics?
I think honestly, I think Gears might be a tad bit more impressive just because it's doing all this at 60. It does doing everything at double the frame rate. And I know you can do that with Demon Souls, but I don't know, when people talk about the best games of the gen and people leave out Gears 5, I'm just kind of like, really? Gears 5 is doing all that, what it's doing, and it's doing it at 60 frames. People forget about that. But yeah, remember when the whole Gears DLC was kind of rumored? Remember, and I told you about that, and you were like, there's no way, they don't do DLCs. And, I was like, well, that's not necessarily true. They've done it before. And then you were like, DLCs usually suck. And I'm like, most of the time they normally do suck, yes. But this is one of those rare exceptions where the DLC is actually really good, because there's not a lot of. I played a lot of DLC in my day, for going for completions. I got 1,000 gamer score in this game, and they just added DLC, and I was kind of in that OCD mindset where I had to get the completion back. I played some shitty DLCs in my day, so my viewpoint is maybe a little bit colored because of that. But Gears, this one's really good, and like Jess says, it's free, although it's not really free. I mean, it's $20 if you want to buy it, but if you do have Game Pass Ultimate, you can play it for no additional cost, which is fantastic, and I hope they do more of that in the future with their other single-player games or any of their other games that are going to get expansions. Forza Horizon, they always get about 2 expansions before the new title comes out, right? And those you always had to pay for. But with this kind of first step, it'd be great if Forza Horizon had the expansions in Ultimate. I think Microsoft is also trying to push as many people as possible into Ultimate. So like like Avowed comes out and it has expansions, or Fable comes out and it has expansions, or any other stuff like the Bethesda games. Like, how cool would it be that you have Doom Eternal in Game Pass, but then when the new expansion comes out, you just have it because you're an Ultimate.
I like the idea of like quality story based DLC, and like maybe I was just sort of like, leaning into the bad memories of terrible DLC, because there has been great DLC over the years. Like Mass Effect 2 had some of the best DLC ever. Like Overlord and Lair of the Shadow Broker was just mind blowing for a story DLC. But like oftentimes. I remember, man, there was a Fallout 3 DLC, which was like in virtual reality. That was just terrible. I think it was called, I can't remember what it was called now. Called Anchor something. I can't remember. But I digress. Some story DLC has just been terrible over the years and not even worth paying for. But you don't even have to pay for this as a Game Pass. And it's just another reason to keep subscription rolling over. If this is the kind of quality benchmark for a story DLC that they're putting out, pretty cool stuff, man. I'm gonna download it and play it myself. Maybe with my brother if it's got co-op. Do you still get the abilities, the Jack abilities, or nah?
Hold on 1 second. Someone's talking to me upstairs.
Oh dear.
All right. Anyways,
getting lead.
So
do you get the Jack abilities in Hivebusters?
No.
Is there any new game mechanic though?
Well, like you have the abilities that they have. Like, you know how they each have their own abilities from the escape. Like the Scottish guy has a shield that like expands out, and the Liani, I believe her name is, has like the electric like her melee knife gets like electric, and she can kind of like run up to people and insta kill them, and the other guy can like lay down like the ability for ammo to be refilled. And there's collectibles in the game. Obviously there's like lore collectibles, but like there's collectibles in the game that upgrade your abilities. So like you can essentially like, it gives you like, your like ability to replenish lasts longer and stuff like that. They're scattered about, and it makes your arcade style abilities, which maybe that's something they could really introduce more of in Gear 6, for stuff like that. So there's no Jack. Sorry Jez. But I mean, why would it be? Because like it takes place at like a different time. Then I think it takes place after Act 1 but before Act 2 of Gears 5. I believe that's the case. So
fair enough. I didn't think much of the speaking of DLC, I really didn't think much of the Gears Tactics DLC they added. Well, like they didn't add anything. They just added Jack as a playable character that gives you like extra stuff in combat. I thought that was kind of weak. But like Gears Tactics is the one game I was hoping, because XCOM in the past has gotten like these massive do-over expansions, and it's sort of known for it. Like some of the expansions for XCOM 2 like completely changed the game in really big ways and add whole new stories and bosses and stuff like that. I was kind of hoping Gears Tactics would get that treatment, but maybe it just wasn't popular enough or something. I don't know.
Christian Tuttle has a question. He says, any news on when Minecraft with ray tracing will come to Series X?
I often get this question DM to me as well, but like there's no news on it definitively, other than that they are working on it. The whole like they call it the Render Dragon pipeline, and it's it's DX12 ray tracing and stuff like that. It's still being tested on PC, so because I think what the holdup might be is that they want to make it sort of as cross-platform as possible. So because that's kind of what they use Minecraft for almost, like these days. Like Minecraft is often used to test cross-platform capabilities. It's used to test cross-platform Xbox Live APIs, cross save and all that sort of stuff. And now they're gonna, and now they use it to test cross code, the Bedrock edition, the same code base across Android and all the other platforms. So possibly that's similarly to what they're doing with ray tracing for Minecraft, is that they want to make sure that it's as cross platform capable as possible. But like last I heard that about the last inside information I heard about this whole sort of the Render Dragon thing was that there just wasn't that many people working on it. And that's kind of like how Mojang operates. It's like they're smaller teams and stuff like that, which is kind of weird, isn't it? Considering how big and how much money Minecraft probably makes. So, I don't know.
Because if you compare like Minecraft to Fortnite, Epic has tons of employees because they're constantly churning out new ideas and new events, right? Where Mojang is kind of a smaller company, smaller devs, and for how big Minecraft is, one of the biggest games in the world. I think, does it have more monthly active users than Fortnite? I think it does, right? Or they're close.
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah. You would think that there'd be more employees working on Minecraft than there are at Epic on Fortnite, but that's not necessarily the case. And maybe that's how Minecraft is succeeding, like still succeeding. Maybe too many people working on a product, too many, chefs in the kitchen, coming up with different things. I honestly don't know, but maybe I don't know.
They might have to change tack though, man, because Tencent, our beloved overlords, Tencent, are making a game that looks very, very similar to Minecraft, but more modernized, with a sort of modernized combat, modernized mechanics, but basically copies Minecraft's creative aspects. So like Minecraft and Microsoft might want to, I can't even remember what it's called, but I just know that Tencent's working on something like Minecraft, and Microsoft might want to consider beefing up Mojang to take on Tencent if that game gains any traction. I can't even remember what it's called. Someone in the chat might know. But like I think I've said it on this show before. Like people have said to me that 2021 is the rise of Tencent. A League of Legends just announced that they're making an MMO based on League of Legends. There's a League of Legends story game coming to Xbox next year, which is Tencent too. And Tencent has been stealing Microsoft employees and Blizzard employees left, right, and center. The person leading the League of Legends MMO effort is widely credited with World of Warcraft's decline, though. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But
Tencent they just acquired Leu Technologies, which is splash damage and digital extremes and stuff like that. And Splash Damage has been very heavily involved with a lot of the Gears games and Halo games, and they did Gears Tactics. So that's a big blow for Microsoft. I can't imagine Tencent's going to allow them to continue to be like help, essentially, right? On those franchises.
There's a lot of anxiety about what Tencent might do to the gaming industry, like when it comes to consoles and stuff like that. But so far, it seems like they just want to put their games on different platforms, and they don't necessarily want to, compete directly and stuff like that. They're kind of like Microsoft in that they're all about KPIs and engagement. Their KPIs are engagement rather than, hardware sales. So they're more about getting users where they are, which is why they buy games that have massive service components like Path of Exile and they own League of Legends and Riot Games, which have some of the highest engagement figures of any game anywhere. I don't. Have you ever played League of Legends?
No. No interest in playing League of Legends or any of that stuff. I'm not a fan of MOBAs whatsoever.
I've tried it, but I just like if I'm going to play a MOBA, I'm going to play Blizzard's MOBA, and even that's not that great. I don't see the appeal of them. I don't know. Different strokes, eh?
Different strokes for different folks. Yep.
But I have been playing Diablo Immortal this week.
Oh, and who'd have thought that Diablo Immortal would come out looking like a rose compared to Cyberpunk, huh?
Well,
don't people like Diablo Immortal? Are people kind of happy with it so far?
Well, it's kind of like a limited alpha, so there's like you have no idea how much of pay to win stuff's gonna kick in. You have no idea right now how time gated it's gonna be. Like I remember when I played the Elder Scrolls Blades alpha, and it was like, oh, this is pretty fun. But then when you play it for real, it's like you play it for like 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden you hit a wall, and it's like, oh, by the way, you can't play again tomorrow. You can't play again until tomorrow unless you pay us money. So you just don't know how much that free to play, pay to win stuff's going to kick in, and it will kick in at some point. Every free to play game has this wall on mobile where you just hit it and then you have to pay if you want to progress any further. But it was fine. It's fine. It recycles assets from Diablo 3 like crazy. It runs like crap on my Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. You think it would run pretty good, right? Considering it's like one of the most powerful phones on earth. But it is an alpha, so maybe there's time for them to optimize it. But it's just Diablo 3 on phone. Like, it's just, I don't know. I just don't know. It's just Diablo 3 on a phone. It's not for us, basically. Diablo 4 is for us. Like, Diablo Immortal is going after people who don't have a console, basically. Which makes me wonder, like, why Microsoft hasn't tried to hit that market more. Like, did you see that Gears pop shutting down?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that's very surprising to you.
No, I don't. But
Do you know
it's
who?
it's just funny that Microsoft hasn't had any success in that space at all.
Do you know?
Really.
Do you know what game the developer of Gears Pop went on to make after Gears Pop?
Nope.
Fall Guys.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Ryan says Gears should go back to the story around Locust, not the drones, and brings back some atmosphere and horror. I would like more atmosphere and horror in the game. That'd be pretty awesome. But yeah, you know what? Moving on. We're done talking about the games. We're gonna get into a lot of these topics, and I figure we'll start out with probably the reveal of Perfect Dark at the Game Awards. But before we get into that, I just kind of want to talk about the Game Awards themselves. I'm assuming you watched it, Jess, because I watched it. I thought Jeff Keighley did a great job producing the show as he normally does. I really like watching them. There weren't that many premieres or exclusive reveals that were on the level of the Xbox Series X, right? That one, like when that happened in 2019, like I didn't even care about what happened at the rest of the show. And yeah, this was basically a coronation of Last of Us Part 2, as it did win pretty much every single award that it was nominated for, except for one, I believe. And yeah, whatever. I don't really care that Perfect Dark won. But Perfect Dark, rather, Last of Us won. My game of the year.
Rand leaking next year's game.
Yeah, the winner of the 2022 Game of the Year is Perfect Dark. I have issues with the Perfect Dark with Last of Us Part 2 storytelling. But whatever. That's dead horse. Like I don't really feel like talking about that again. But I will say, we're both big Mass Effect fans, right?
Yeah.
Love Mass Effect. What did you feel? What did you think when the final reveal of the night was a Mass Effect Will Continue trailer? When they did one for Dragon Age 2 years ago and did another one for Dragon Age again, and we still know nothing about the new Dragon Age and nothing regarding this new Mass Effect, and it kind of feels like they're just spinning their tires. Like, that's what I like. Yeah, I got really excited when it was Mass Effect, but I'm just like, you don't even have a title. Is that supposed to be Liara? Like, is this supposed to be like a sequel to Mass Effect 3? Like, if you want to talk about companies that have sabotaged their prestige and their pedigree and their reputation, and you want to put and I said again, if you want to put a developer up there that would go along with somebody like CD Projekt Red, you have to put up BioWare. But I looked at that trailer and I'm just like, we've seen this before from you. What am I supposed to feel? You right? Tell me.
Yeah, it's just like I saw some friends of mine who are Mass Effect fans on Twitter get all hyped about it, but I felt kind of like you, like it's EA BioWare. It's not BioWare. It's a different. They've got to work so hard to make me care about BioWare again. Like I've said before on the show, like Mass Effect and Dragon Age are two of my favorite franchises of all time. I've completed Dragon Age Origins more than any other single player game. I've completed that game like 10 times or more. Like, and every time I play it, I discover something new. I feel like some little detail that I didn't even know was there, or some dialogue choice I didn't know was there. That game was so perfect for me that I just wanted to play it non-stop. And and Dragon Age 2 was great too, and Inquisition was all right as well. And I don't. Some Dragon Age fans like they don't like Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, but I just wanted more Dragon Age. I was like happy with what I was getting. I didn't think any of it was terrible by any means. And same with Mass Effect. Like Andromeda was a bad Mass Effect game, but it wasn't a bad game per se. And I was so annoyed when they cancelled the story DLC because they left that game on this cliffhanger ending, which just doesn't resolve anything. And then they finished off some story aspects with a book or something. I can't even remember. And as we know, I don't read books.
It's funny when that trailer came on before it was revealed it was Mass Effect. My first thought was, is this Halo? Because I kind of was like, it could be Halo space, but then there's like, nah, we're not. Halo's not going to be there. Then I was like, is this Starfield? And then I saw the Mass Effect relay, and I'm like, well, this is Mass Effect. But it was like, we already know it exists because they said it was, coming. But it's like, Mass Effect will continue. It's like, okay, like I feel
okay, sure.
Okay,
sure.
show me, when you have the game ready and it's coming out, I'll believe you. Like, we'll see what it is. But as for like, did any other reveals from the Game Awards you still remember a couple weeks later? Like, are any that come to mind besides the Perfect Dark one and the Mass Effect? Like Back for Blood, which is I think like on beta on Steam right now, which people seem to really to be enjoying. Is any other reveal kind of stand out to you?
I didn't watch the Game Awards itself because it's on late here and I was like in bed or playing Warcraft or something. So I didn't even watch the show. I just sort of like I was like refreshing the Game Awards playlist on the Xbox's YouTube channel looking for whatever was relevant. And but like that was the thing that stood out for me is like Mass Effect sort of like the trailer was almost apologetic. Like they didn't announce a game. They announced the fact they hadn't killed the franchise yet. Like that is like the lowest amount of effort, So like it's just so strange. And it's like it's because EA knows how passionate Mass Effect fans are about that franchise. And they know how much potential that franchise has. It could have been the Star Wars of video games, for God's sake. And they also know how badly they fucked it up. And how badly they alienated the fans of BioWare. And that they have to put out a trailer that apologizes for the lack of information. So weird. But this is EA we're talking about. The company that is defined by its failures more so than anything else. So forgive me for not being excited about their apology trailer. I'm sort of totally over.
So
what EA says.
Are you saying you didn't get hyped for Arc 2 with Vin Diesel exclusively on Xbox Series X in 2022?
No, because I don't like Arc Survival Evolved.
Well, is Arc 2 going to be different than Arc Survival Evolved? Maybe it's a narrative game. Why else would you have Vin Diesel in the game? I don't know.
I don't know. Oh, sorry. I'd love a sequel to Butcher Bay. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, that'd be pretty. It is a weird like it is a weird. Like, I mean, I guess maybe it's not that weird of exclusive considering how popular Arc is on Xbox and in Game Pass. Like, but I never thought they'd make an Arc 2. So there was a few announcements that Xbox made. They had Halo, Master Chief in Fortnite, which everybody knew was coming. And I still have a question around that. I have a question around that after I read this super chat from the one and only Darj Knight. He says, "Hey guys, loving the show. Want to wish you lads and everyone else in a chat very Merry Christmas." Thank you, Darj. It's good to see you again, buddy.
Thanks, bro.
My question is, was Halo Infinite included in Fortnite because the game was delayed and they thought, well, this was a good marketing chance to go alongside like Kratos and stuff like that because the game got delayed. Because there's a part of me that believes that Fortnite would never market a game that directly competes with itself. So if like, I guess the question is, was this always part of the marketing plan that Halo Infinite would have been released with the console, and that also Master Chief would be in Fortnite at the same time, which is essentially marketing a character that is in a competing product? And you could say, well, that's not true. Like, Halo Infinite wouldn't compete with Fortnite, but yes, it would. Especially with Halo being free to play, a lot of the big Fortnite streamers would have been playing Halo when it came out, obviously because it was new. And when Fortnite and Epic are telling you that they think of Netflix as competition, basically saying that anything that takes people away from Fortnite is competition, then I think they would view Halo Infinite as competition. And I kind of look at it as like a lot of the things they associate themselves with, or at least kind of help co-market, are things that aren't necessarily game related. You have like the Marvel characters in the latest season and stuff like that. And you even have Kratos, but he doesn't have a new game coming until end of next year, potentially 2022. You know, his last game was 2 years ago, so he's not directly competing, but Halo Infinite would have been directly competing with Fortnite, not only on Xbox, but also on PC, and it's free to play. Like, I wonder if that was always the plan, or if that was just something that kind of opened up because the game got delayed. What do you think?
I have no idea. I would honestly think that that was probably always the plan.
You think so?
Like they're always exploring ways to link up with Fortnite. They got like, ain't there like Halo Fortnite toys already or something? And they did that whole Fortnite console. I think that was probably planned a long time ago. I don't think they did it just because the game was delayed. It was probably done because they expected the game to be coming out and because they wanted to, like, you know, advertise Halo Infinite as a competing free-to-play game. But, like, Epic Games has this sort of... They have another agenda beyond sort of Fortnite as a game. They want to build up their Epic Games Store, and, you know, Microsoft's been pretty helpful in a way towards Epic Games and open to Epic Games and stuff like that. And I suspect in 2021 we might see more Microsoft games on the Epic Games Store in the future, because right now they're only on Steam. There's no reason why they can't be on the Epic Games Store because they're Win32 packages or whatever. But I suspect like there's some work to do to make all of that work cross-platform and stuff like that. So there's a lot of give and take between Microsoft and Epic right now. And you know, that Halo being in Fortnite helps Microsoft's agenda, whereas like Epic cozying up to Microsoft helps their agenda by getting Xbox Game Pass games on the Epic Games Store, which isn't very popular right now, let's face it. So there's always something a bit more when it comes to Fortnite and Epic Games, because they're a platform holder, not just a games company.
Did you?
It's a bit weird.
I just saw this tweet from Matt Piscatella, and he says this is likely to have a significant impact on game streaming if passed. And I was like, oh, what's this? And it said the COVID-19 stimulus bill would make illegal streaming a felony. Yikes!
Wait, what?
Yeah, I guess they're trying to include.
What's that got to do with? What's that got to do with COVID?
Well, it's the U.S. government, especially when something like when they want to like get a bill through. Sometimes they include other things that wouldn't be essentially make it in other things, and they kind of just ram it through. So like people, they know the COVID stimulus bill would get passed, so a lot of other things will get thrown in there that wouldn't pass on their own. So I'd have to go and read it, but like if that's what I think it is, yikes. Sorry,
illegal
Twitch.
Streams? What are those?
Illegal streams.
What's an illegal?
Anything that's like copyrighted. Essentially, if you illegally stream a game, or if you illegally stream a movie or music, it's punishable with up to 10 years in jail. Yikes!
Ooh, that is That is rough, man. We need to like make sure we don't accidentally, play some, Cardi B in the background while it's
Yeah.
podcast. So,
Well, I don't know. That's that is definitely something to keep your eye on. So
that's what the kids listen to, right? Cardi
yeah,
B.
yeah. K3 says, "Hey, love you guys. Always keep me company at work. Thanks for listening, man." So back to the Game Awards. I just saw that on Twitter and I was like, well, this could have significant impact on the gaming industry and streaming and YouTube in general if that passes. Like I said, Microsoft had some big reveals. The Xbox Series X version of Microsoft Flight Sim is coming in summer. It's not coming to last gen, which isn't too surprising because that game is very demanding, so I'm not too surprised that it's not coming to Xbox One, but I'm kind of waiting for somebody to come out and say, Phil Spencer and Matt Booty lied. They lied because they said everything would be cross-gen up until the end of 2021, right? So that's coming in summer, and the trailer looked great. Like we mentioned, Fortnite, Master Chief, combining powers, and you can get to watch Master Chief do ridiculous dances. They had a Game Pass ad where they announced the rest of the Yakuza games were coming, and I think they're coming like in a month from now. So like the entire Yakuza franchise is going to be on Xbox. Yakuza, from Yakuza 0 all the way to Yakuza 6 with the newest one is also on Xbox, but not in Game Pass. They added Skyrim to Game Pass. Whoop-de-doo-dah, right? Like Skyrim on Game Pass finally. But the big reveal, which they did at the top of the show, very much in the same slot, if you recall, when the Xbox Series X was revealed. Microsoft finally let everybody know what the initiative was working on. And wouldn't you know it, Jez, it's Perfect Dark. Wow, surprise, surprise. Shocker.
Surprise.
Shocker. Which is, the thing that's interesting about it was we had previously talked about it like the week before because there were rumors out from our good old buddy Mediocre Ed over at Xbox Era, remember? So we talked about it. That there was like kind of a Black Mirror episodic thing potentially, like, and it looks like, and it basically is, a full-on reboot of Perfect Dark. Now, you've heard some interesting stuff about the game, which we'll talk about in a minute. I will say that there was always two rumors I heard about the game, stretching back about a year and a half, which were that it was a reboot of Perfect Dark, like a complete reboot from the ground up. And the other one, which is the rumor that most people talked about, was that this was a Perfect Dark game in like a game set in the Perfect Dark universe, but not necessarily Perfect Dark, and that there was some sort of multi-Xbox IP thing going on with it, which where I think a lot of the seasonal or episodic rumors originated from, right? And obviously when you talk about rumors and speculation, things get like kind of it's like a game of telephone. You hear something that somebody knows from somebody else, and you don't necessarily get the full information from it. So I'd always heard those two things, and it was always mostly like, oh, this is not Perfect Dark, but it is, and it was basically going to be some sort of, I don't even know. It was just the information I always had was always generally vague about it. But it turns out that no, it's the original rumor is correct, that it's a straight up reboot of Perfect Dark, and it probably will have some multiplayer component eventually, or tied into it or whatever. And that, well, why don't you say what you've heard about the game and the gameplay for it?
Well, it's interesting because like I didn't hear any of those rumors about Perfect Dark. Like I'd heard them through you, and I believed them. But like since the reveal, I've like had a bit of extra information. Like because I haven't played Perfect Dark. I don't know anything about Perfect Dark. I have no nostalgia for Perfect Dark. So like I sort of like I downloaded the two Perfect Dark games via backwards compatibility on Xbox Series X. Which is just cool that you're able to do that. I can dive into the history books and find out about these older games and stuff. And I've been told that it's taking more cues from Perfect Dark Zero, with an emphasis on gadgets and gadgetry and stuff like that. And I've also been told that it might be potentially comparable to the likes of Splinter Cell Blacklist in terms of its stealth gameplay. Stylish, stealth action, not as slow as the old Splinter Cells, maybe a little bit more like the modern Splinter Cells. But that's also a very sort of vague comparison, and it obviously won't be completely like that. But those are things that I've heard. And you've heard something else about it, haven't you? I think.
I heard
If I
that.
remember right.
I don't know how much of this I can say, but I heard that some of the people that have played it are very, very, very high on it. So
Yeah.
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 Which is exciting.
I'm optimistic about it, basically, is from what I've heard. And it's like if they release like this mini documentary where they talked about how there aren't really that many games that put you in the role of a high tech spy like James Bond anymore, and you know, Hitman puts an emphasis almost on like it's almost like a puzzle stealth game. Like you have to observe everything and work out your plan of attack and stuff like that. But from what I understand, Perfect Dark will be a little bit more action oriented. And if you look at the pedigree of people that are working at the initiative, you know, you've got you know, Daryl Gallagher, who's obviously credited with rebooting Tomb Raider successfully. So you know, I'm not expecting it to be like as explosively action as Tomb Raider, but like you should expect it to be, you know, pretty slick stealth.
I mean, in that
with a lot of cyberpunk sort of elements.
In that interview, they talk about it being like a blockbuster secret agent thriller game, right? And I mean, the game director is Drew Murray, whose last game was Sunset Overdrive, which had a lot of movement mechanics of how you get across from the city really quickly in different ways. And they talked about how, you know, it's first person, but basically how Joanna, assuming it's Joanna Dark, which most likely is, how she, you know, can vault over things or slide under things. So you're probably looking at a first-person stealth game that has like kind of a Mirror's Edge aspect to it. A lot of agility, using maybe gadgets to get into certain areas. But I want to talk about the trailer, okay? So when that trailer aired, and it was, okay, here's Drew Murray. Obviously, you knew it was the Initiative's game. So I watched a ton of reactions of just people on YouTube who were streaming it. And I wanted to see if any of them kind of knew what it was. And the amount of people who didn't know that it was the Initiative until the Initiative logo came up, I guess maybe wasn't too surprising, because who recognizes Drew Murray and Daryl Gallagher, right? Like, I'm an Xbox guy. I cover Xbox news and give my opinions and all this stuff on my YouTube channel. So I knew exactly, it was like, okay, this is the Initiative, right? Plus I had heard that the game was going to be there the day before, so I was kind of looking out for it. And then, you know, it starts off with this kind of take on, hey, the world and global warming has kind of accelerated, and the oceans have flooded a lot of different continents, and they even show one where, like, there's a continent on fire, so, like, there's a lot of ecological disaster, and they even talk about eco-sci-fi, and then it kind of goes into a drone looking for a target, and then you get to the big building, which some people say looks like the Carrington Institute. But I knew it was Perfect Dark the moment they panned up to the building and you saw the logo for Datadyne. You know, the small D and the big D back to back. I immediately knew that was the logo for Perfect Dark, and I knew right then and there, I'm like, well, this is Perfect Dark. And it's interesting watching the reactions and how many people didn't recognize the logo. There was a few, like, I was watching my buddy Brown Man over on Twitch. He knew immediately. As soon as he saw that logo, he's like, oh my god, this is Perfect Dark. And I think anybody who kind of knows the legacy of Perfect Dark who played those would see that logo and know what was about to happen. But the majority of it, nobody knew what was happening until the title screen came up and it said Perfect Dark. A lot of people were even, like, when the guys said, you know, did you find what you're looking for, Agent Dark? People started like, wait, is this what I think it could be? And then it said Perfect Dark. But it was like, if you know the game and its history, like, you should have known right away when you saw the logo. So
I had no idea, because I've never played Perfect Dark, or I would have had no idea if I didn't see the, you know, YouTube trailer title. But um, I only know Joanna Dark, and I only have this sort of ethereal, sort of external idea of what Perfect Dark is. And I have dabbled in the games on Xbox, but they're quite dated, and it's a bit hard to play them in modern times. But it does seem like an IP that has quite a lot going for it, especially like reimagined through a modern lens. They're going for this whole climate change sort of angle, imagining what the world will look like if in a few decades or even less, as like temperatures heat up and uh, water recedes and ice caps melt and ecological disasters and catastrophes start taking place. I saw a very charming article this afternoon where it was like China is increasing its experiments into weather manipulation, forcing rain into places where it's not meant to be, which is always fun to know what the next war will be over. So, yeah, it's probably quite a poignant topic because once all this sort of COVID stuff gets brushed away, it's like probably going to be climate change that comes back into focus again as like the biggest existential threat facing humanity. So I don't know. I'm based on what I've heard about it, sounds like it's going to be a pretty cool game, and they've certainly got a lot of talent at that studio. I just I want to see gameplay, man. It's more CGI.
That's kind of been the one criticism that you can, lay at Xbox. Outside of like, hey, it's taking you this long to get your first party, and it's great that you're buying all these studios, but realistically, all the trailers that they've shown for their games have all been CGI trailers. I think the only one that showed gameplay was Halo Infinite, well, because it was supposed to be out. And this is just another game, which is great because like you have all these games that are set to come out in the next couple years, and it's a totally different scenario to most of the Xbox One generation. But I think like people really, really, really want to see just gameplay of any of these games, and I've always said for a while like they should show these games early, and I'm glad that they did because now people can stop speculating about what the Initiative's game is. It's Perfect Dark. Playground's game is Fable. Obsidian's working on Avowed. That Ninja Theory's working on Hellblade 2. Like a lot of the questions that people had are answered, and the only ones that aren't answered realistically anymore are, well, what's Coalition doing? Because we don't know, but you assume it's Gears 6. The Compulsion game, don't know what that is. And Phil talked about how he can't wait for people to see what the Compulsion's game is. So that'd be pretty interesting whenever that's revealed. And then the other question, realistically, is what about the Bethesda games? What's Arcane's next game? What's Machine Games? Are they doing Wolfenstein 3? When's Starfield coming out? And then, of course, the big granddaddy of them all that people are still maybe not on are the games going to be exclusive to Xbox? Will they come to PlayStation day one? Will they come to PlayStation a year later? That's what kind of people are waiting on. Like, they see the value of Game Pass and all these games there day one. They see how powerful the Xbox Series X is and will continue to be, and it's only going to get better, and how basically the Series S is punching above its weight, and Microsoft expanding cloud gaming into Windows 10 PC and iOS next year. Like, they see a lot of the puzzle pieces falling into place about Xbox's vision, but at the end of the day, it all comes back down to the games. And while I hear you say, hey, Perfect Dark is going to play like Splinter Cell, but the newer Splinter Cells with the heavy emphasis on gadgets and mobility, that excites me at my core. Like, I'm
just what I've heard.
Just what you heard, but I trust you. I'm just saying, like, if that's true, like, that is exciting for me as someone who is a Splinter Cell fan and is frustrated at the fact that Ubisoft will not give us a brand new Splinter Cell. So here we have the return of Joanna Dark by a studio that's built up of some incredible developers from across the industry who've worked on amazing AAA Game of the Year contenders, and they're all working at Xbox to reboot what a lot of people would say a beloved franchise, even though it's only had a couple games. But it's also a genre that doesn't see a lot of action anymore. and it's just another game in the diversification of what Xbox Game Studios is doing. You know, you have your third-person shooter, you have your RPGs, you have your first-person shooters, you have your smaller games, the indie styles, the survival games, and now you have kind of a stealth action. And I'm sure there's going to be more that they're going to share about the game later on. And then you have all the other games, like I mentioned with Bethesda, like you can see everything falling into place. It's just people want the glimpse of that sweet, sweet gameplay. And it's fine from the first announce. I've always say if you announce the game for the first time, you can do it CGI. I don't really have a problem with that. I think what bothered a lot of people at the July Game Showcase was that it was all CGI. And it was just kind of like overbearing was all of it. It was like, like I just want to see some gameplay. But the next time you show these games, I want to see some gameplay. Next time you show Fable, I'm assuming sometime in 2021 at some E3 like event, I want to see the gameplay of it. Same thing with Avowed, same thing with Hellblade 2. Like CGI trailers work, one time for me at least. Because it is I just find it very difficult to get super excited about a CGI trailer because I know that's not what I'm going to play. I'm excited about the announcement. Perfect Dark is back and it's made by Initiative. Fuck yeah. Like that's exciting. But the trailer itself necessarily didn't do anything. It's more about the information that's what they're working on.
They're almost like it's almost like a concept art. Like when you're making a game and like first of all you set out like what you're planning to do, and then your concept art is sort of imagine sort of what that world will look like in context, and then like the next step from concept art is like almost like CGI, bring that to life. What does it look like? Stuff like that. Like those very early Quantum Break CGI trailers were very different from the game that it eventually became later on. We even had a change of actor between the reveal.
Well, that was
trailer.
always planned. That was always planned. They said they'd always had a stand-in, and then they always planned on getting somebody else. But yeah, I get what you. I get what you mean.
It was just like it was to give you an idea about what to expect, like to put the concept of what Quantum Break is in your mind. And I think, like, I agree with you that it's fine for a reveal to be CGI because it gives us an idea in our mind of sort of where it's going to go. The problem is that the CG is more interesting than the game that it eventually became. And you sort of get this effect of over-marketing the game through CGI. Like the Phantom Dust CGI trailer looked amazing, and well, and the Scalebound CGI trailer looks amazing, and
Well,
so
to be fair to the
that's a whole other issue. But.
True. To be fair to the what was the game you mentioned before Scalebound?
Phantom Dust.
Phantom Dust. The game that was supposed to be attached to got canceled. And they did the Xbox game, but even like the developers who were working on that Perfect Dark game were like, yeah, they set the bar too high because the game wasn't going to look like that, right? Which is always like, yeah, that is the fear. Like
that is my fear with State of Decay 3.
And I know. I say like, hey, it's a vocal filler. You're on a podcast. Say how many times you say like, but when you come out with State of Decay 3 and it looks like that. When you know what State of Decay 2 looks like, and it looks nothing like the trailer that they showed off for State of Decay 3, you might be setting the bar a little bit too high for what to expect for the next game. Now, could they hit that? Is that a target render? If so, great, because that would be an amazing step up from State of Decay 2. But you're setting people's expectations for this is what the game's going to look like. Now, maybe there's none of that for Perfect Dark because that didn't really seem... That just seemed like what Daryl Gallagher said with a tone setter. This is the tone of what we're going with. You have these corporations that came in and they solved these issues, but there might be something nefarious, and Joanna Dark's looking for it. Like, you didn't really get a sense of what the game could look like because you didn't get even a really solid glance at any particular character or Joanna Dark. It was just... This is like a cinematic that would play. Whereas like State of Decay 3 was like a full-on character that you saw in all of her glory as she was hunting like an undead deer or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't...
That's my fear, man. Like that undead deer looked really, really cool. And then if you look at State of Decay 2 next to it, like it doesn't look that good.
Yeah, but you
put it that way.
The State of Decay and Undead Labs are a developer that probably could do a lot more if they were brought in house, which they were. And the State of Decay 2 came out in 2018. You probably figured they give them at least 4 years to make State of Decay 3. So you're looking at 2022. That's a lot of time. And if you give them the budget that's needed, the game could look significantly better than State of Decay 2 ever was. And more than likely, it's not going to run on last gen anyways. And Perfect Dark, when it was announced on its Xbox page, is only on Series X and Series S and PC. So we're getting to the point where the Xbox One is going to be phased out. I think by the end of 2021. I mean, you already see it. Like I mentioned before, Microsoft Flight Sim ain't coming to Xbox One, and that's the right call. No matter,
it's almost an advantage Xbox has by not selling so many Xbox One consoles, is that they can more rapidly discount that user base, and especially because like a lot of people who probably stuck with Xbox One are probably the more hardcore people who are more happy to have shifted to Xbox Series X more quickly. But like PlayStation's got like tens of millions of PlayStation 4s still out there, which, when do you cut them off? It's potentially easier for Microsoft.
Well, they probably cut them. They probably have a target date in mind. I would say, like, they probably have a figure of how many their systems they're going to sell, the PS5s, and how many they need to be out there to make their first party releases be profitable. And it wasn't there at launch, so you have Miles Morales, cross-gen. You have Horizon cross-gen. The way they're being non-committal about God of War Ragnarok leads me to believe it's probably cross-gen too, which it may or may not be, but it makes financial sense for them to do that. And then at some point, I mean, he's already said, like, up until 2022, they probably figure the people transitioning to Series X and PS5 are the people that are your super hardcore, the ones who spend the most money. They're the ones like transitioning immediately. So once you probably get a couple years in and you've shifted X amount of units, they can be like, okay, if your game's planned for 2022 and beyond, you can forget about the PS4 and you can forget about Xbox One. So we can forget about these systems holding back last gen. Georgie says, hey, thanks, Jez, for the good news. Rand, you said hi? Good. Yeah, I heard that's people are very excited about what the initiative's going to do with Perfect Dark. So, Crap Gamer's daddy says, do you really think we'll be waiting all year in 2021 for only one big Xbox Game Studio game in Halo Infinite? Or do we have a first half surprise? That's an interesting question, because 2021, in my mind, has always been light for Xbox. Like,
yeah, I mean, people talk about Flight Simulator, but at the same time, it's weird because you don't want to call it a niche game because it's really popular. Like, for us, traffic-wise, Flight Simulator beats every other game for traffic except for Minecraft for Windows Central in 2021, and that's like in 2020, and that's like just a small slice of the data, but it just goes to show how popular that game is. So to call it niche feels weird, but still, people don't count Flight Simulator because in the same way they don't count Forza because it's just a simulation game or it's just a racing game or whatever. So like, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
A big surprise? Flight Sim is what I call a big surprise. Everybody knew it was coming. It's not a surprise. So for him, do we have a first half surprise, meaning a game that isn't really known coming in the first half? Like something like
I just mean like it's a game that's coming as well as Halo Infinite. When people talk about the fact that Halo Infinite is the only game next year.
I was more focusing on like, do we have his question about having a first half surprise? Like, I think something like Warhammer Dark Tides, which showed up at the Game Awards and looks pretty cool. I think that game could show up in the first 6 months. You have the Medium in January. Maybe Psychonauts comes out sometime in the first 6 months of next year.
But there's also like the Ascent, which got delayed.
Yeah, there's Xbox has a lot of
there's some smaller games.
Yeah, but anything huge from first party, maybe an Xbox Global Publishing game comes out, but I would imagine that would have to be announced first. I think the majority of Xbox's year is going to be towards the back half. Like the Jeff Grubb rumor of Forza Horizon 5 is that real? If so, that could be launching sometime at the end of next year. Obviously, we know Halo is going to be launching, which we're going to be talking about later in the show because they did the whole update. There's Starfield and, the potential of that launching. Like, I don't think you can expect any Bethesda games to launch in the first 6 months because Xbox hasn't even acquired them yet. And so I think that's unrealistic to expect an exclusive from them. So it's like I've been saying for a long time. When you look at the timetable that Xbox was going at, and you look at when they acquired these studios, and they've been very upfront. Like Hellblade 2, they said very early development. That's what Phil said. Forza Motorsport, very early development. It's like you look at these studios they acquired in 2018, and what the turnaround time is typically for a big release of a game, which is normally 3 to 4 years. And then you add Bethesda on top of it. It was like Microsoft was in a position because of their lack of building up first party from the entire generation that they weren't going to have a lot of stuff. And 2021 looks dry, unfortunately, which is maybe a lot of the reasons why they made some deals with some indies and get some games in there and all that stuff. So I don't particularly believe there's going to be a first half surprise. I mean, I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong about this and have like a big surprise, but I would imagine there's going to be some high profile releases from, partners that will drive it. And then when you get to the end of the year with Halo, Forza, Starfield potentially, and then you start going to 2022 with like Everwild and Hellblade and some of the more Bethesda games and some of the other games that we know about, like Fable and Avowed, you won't necessarily even have to ask that question anymore. So,
yeah, there's it's still ramping up. Like when Bethesda and all these studios, because you got to remember, like Obsidian was still finishing work on the Outer Worlds for Private Division, and they've still got another DLC to make for that.
And Exile was finishing up Wasteland 3.
Yeah, and Exile is doing Wasteland 3, and they're pivoting now to make just exclusives. Eventually, they'll just be sort of like... There won't be a year of drought like we've been seeing throughout the Xbox One generation. Eventually, it'll just be like, there'll be a Bethesda studio game, there'll be an Xbox game studio game, there'll be a, Arcane studio game, there'll be this studio game, whoever knows, who the hell knows what next acquisition Microsoft will make game. There'll just be like this regular, steady cadence of games coming out almost on a near constant basis, because that's the plan. That's the Netflix style plan that Microsoft has going for it. And content is king if you're making a subscription service. Like Disney Plus hit 85 million subscribers on the back of one show, basically, because it's just so damn good. And that's just proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that content is your god if you're making a subscription service. So these sort of like concerns, quote unquote, about dry years, dry months, dry quarters, that will be a thing of the past when all these studios start firing on every cylinder and all these games go exclusive, we expect, and all these games will just start coming out. They'll get updates. Yeah, I've Grounded hitting like 2.0 with its like, I don't know, refrigerator update, and you have to go climb in the fridge and battle ants in the ice. I don't know. And all these Minecraft dungeons will be ticking over, constantly getting new content. All these games, like, it's absurd how much Microsoft has actually done this year in a sort of way that's sort of come across almost as understated. Like, a lot of people might think Microsoft had a bad year this year, but they really didn't. Like, Microsoft Flight Simulator dominated Steam. Sea of Thieves dominated Steam. Age of Empires is having its highest engagement ever in its like decades-long history. Minecraft Dungeons is releasing DLC left, right, and center. Grounded dominated Twitch out of nowhere. Nobody thought that game was going to be super popular, but it's like proving to be. And even State of Decay 2 has had tons of updates and has like a thriving community. It's just they just don't dominate the mindshare because they don't have those blockbuster experiences that people want. But even that's going to change in the future, and it's just these things take time,
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah, and that's all that really needs to be said. Scarecrow121 says, all the best for both Rand and Jez and the community for the holidays ahead. Looking for an amazing year and looking forward to more podcasts next year. Best wishes from Brisbane, Australia. Thank you.
What number of podcasts is this now?
155 or 156, 157, like right in there.
Damn.
I have it at the end of the podcast like number. It'll say how many it is. I think it's like 156, I want to say. RDX says the middle Flight Sim Exomech Arc 2 series exclusive releasing in 2021 and medium. Well, Arc 2 they already said was 2022, but I get it. There's games. I think people were just kind of like a surprise. Surprise means unknown, at least to me. So, Artie, he says another PS developer joined Xbox. I mean, a lot of them have. They joined the initiative. Rick Gaffney says, first time listening to Podcast Live. Merry Christmas, Rand and Jazz. Hope you and your families have a lovely time. Can't wait for gaming in 2021 and listening to the best podcast in the world. Wow, that's high praise. Thank you for those kind words, man, and hope you and your family have a awesome holiday. Get all the gifts that you want from Santa Claus. It's gonna 2021 can only be better than 2020, right? Hopefully. I hope so.
What if 2020 is just the tutorial phase?
Yeah. I mean, we'll see.
Like what if 2020 is just like the first island in Cuphead?
Could
go
be.
the second island.
Oh
No.
So let's talk about Cyberpunk, Jez. We've got a lot to talk about here, and then we're gonna talk about Halo, and a couple other things. But Jesus Christ. Jeez, Jez, if you would have said 2 years ago or a year ago that Cyberpunk was going to release and it was going to force Sony to delist the game to offer full refunds, that Microsoft would have to put up a warning on the page before you buy it saying that you may experience problems for a game that potentially, in an era where we've experienced the Anthem launch, we've experienced the Fallout 76 launch, the Marvel Avengers launches of games that didn't perform well and had tons of glitches, right? You would think, CD Projekt Red's got this in the bag. They put out one of the best games of the whole generation in Witcher 3. They know what they're doing. And they put out the game. And they hid console reviews from everybody. External PR was like, we don't know when we're going to be able to give review copies out. But then internal PR over at CD Projekt Red was like, hey, you really like, and you've been a very vocal supporter of Cyberpunk. Here's a PC key. Oh, and by the way, you need to agree to our embargo. And if you're doing video, you can only use our footage. You can't use your own footage. Right there, they should have raised some red flags. Like, wait a minute, I can't use my own footage. I can only use the footage you provide. Okay,
I probably
whatever.
should have read the NDA.
What else?
Xbox
One and PS4 codes. You have no idea when that's going to happen. Okay, well, sometimes that happens. And then the reviews come out, and then people finally buy the game, and it is just a buggy, complete mess on last-gen consoles. There's no next-gen version per se, but the game runs significantly better on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. But it's so buggy and so broken on the Xbox One and PS4, they had to come out and apologize. One of those stupid yellow tweets that people were memeing all year, right? Forcing PlayStation to pull the game at like 3 a.m. Warsaw time, which they say was a discussion that they had with CD Projekt Red. But then one of the CEOs of CD Projekt Red was caught liking tweets criticizing Sony for pulling the game. So it sounds like that was a Sony decision, and they just had informed CD Projekt Red that they were pulling it. Maybe because of the refund policy on PlayStation, it's not the greatest. Maybe it was like the way to do this was just like, hey, to offer full refunds to everybody, we have to delist the game because, if we're delisting the game or if we're giving full refunds to everybody. But it goes even further than that. They threw Microsoft and Sony under the bus in that initial statement, talking about how they passed certification And it eventually came out that it really didn't. Microsoft and Sony were essentially hoping, or at least a gentleman's agreement, that they would fix a lot of the problems. Like, how does that issue where it would trigger epileptic seizures in somebody, right? And there was no warnings, there was none of that. Like, that should have been caught by certification, because that's what it's there for. Like, certification isn't there to catch bugs from a game. Certification is there to make sure that the game doesn't wipe all your saves, or doesn't blow up your system, or brick it, or any of the other like legal and copyright stuff. But it's supposed to catch things like that. And they basically were like given a free pass by both Sony and Microsoft, and then CD Projekt Red threw them under the bus and was like, "Go get refunds." But like, they didn't talk to Microsoft or Sony about that. Like, Jez, what the what the hell happened with this game? Like, is this not like, if you had this is so mind-boggling that this happened, that the board of CD Projekt Red had to hit this target date. They lied to their investors. They were telling their employees one thing and telling their investors something completely different. Oh, nobody was under any pressure to get the game out this year, but then they're telling like their employees the game has to be like, what the fuck went on with Cyberpunk? Because it's a complete joke at this point. And CD Projekt Red has basically torpedoed any goodwill that they built over. You know what? This might be a thing. I think CD Projekt Red thought they were untouchable. And the funny thing is, they've only really made 2 good games. They have Witcher 2, which is amazing, but everybody kind of holds them on the pedestal for what they did with The Witcher 3, right? After The Witcher 3 came out, everybody was like, they are the CD Projekt gods. They can do no wrong. And, right, like, people put them on this pedestal up with the greats in this video game industry. And people would defend them. Like, you'd come out, and anytime there was something, people attacking CD Projekt Red, like Jason Schreier or whatever, you'd have, like, Young Ye come out and defend them. Or you'd have a lot of those talking heads on YouTube would come out to defend them, because people love CD Projekt Red because of what they did with Witcher 3. It was like CD Projekt Red believed their own hype. It's like they farted in a jar and they constantly would smell their own farts and be like, "Oh, this smells like roses. The gamers love us. We're for the gamers. We can do no wrong." And yet, they completely lied to everybody. They didn't show off the version that after the PC would be the most played. They hid that. They basically sold you a faulty product. Then they threw 2 of their biggest partners under the bus in regards to refunds and certification, basically throwing the ball in Microsoft court. Like, Jez, what the fuck, dude? Seriously.
Oh man, I don't even know. Like, it's like you said, and it's like I said earlier. Like, when I didn't actually fully read the NDA, and maybe I should, because I used my own footage in our review, but it it didn't matter because it looks great on PC. Like, like I said earlier, I played it through on PC, and it was great and it was fine. And other game publishers, they often only give you a code for one platform, and because CD Projekt Red own good old games, I figured that was what this was, and they wanted to like give the console codes to like YouTubers and streamers and stuff like that who had to stick to a specific system or something. But I don't know. I maybe made all these assumptions just on the basis of what every other studio and publisher has done in the past. Like, I never get multiple codes per platform for a review copy. And it's never like I have to think like, oh, I need to check the Xbox One version in case it's broken, because that rarely, basically never happens. Like, I've never reviewed a game that was so wildly different on one platform from the other. And I've also never really reviewed a cross-platform game before, cross-generation game before, because I haven't been blogging for that long. So, and I certainly haven't reviewed a game that was made during COVID before, but it does shine a spotlight on how broken the whole system for reviewing games is, because reviewers are only given a few days, if that, to review a game. And the way Google works is your review won't be relevant in Google after the first couple of days. So games marketing takes advantage of that fact by only giving you a few days to test the game, and they only give you one platform access to the game. So I only reviewed it for the PC, where it was pretty damn great, and I love it, and it's still one of my top games of the gen. But then for people who only review the console versions of the game, we're now finding out that they're only given like 24 hours to go hands-on with it, which isn't enough time to do a review, because they didn't want people to review that version of the game, clearly. Because, as we've seen from all the memes, it is very desperately broken. For what? But it just, none of it makes any sense, Rand. Because you don't build a brand by shattering all the trust you've built. And it's like you say, they've only made a few games. So now that we've got like The Witcher 3 to point to and Cyberpunk to point to, we've got one success and one grave failure. And they've basically wiped billions of dollars off their share value. And all because the leaders of the company were indecisive and they wanted to get this game out for Christmas, the Christmas rush or whatever. It's it just boggles the mind, really.
Well,
and it speaks to CD Projekt Red's immaturity as a company.
Well, I think it more speaks to the board and the people making decisions at CD Projekt Red versus like the regular developers.
I'm not talking about the devs, because the devs have every right to be as angry as everyone else. Like, they did their job. They did what they were told. But they were given, like, this obviously mismanaged product. And not only was it mismanaged with the fans, it was mismanaged with the devs and employees. It was mismanaged with the shareholders. Although, who cares about those guys? You know. But, you know, they lied to everyone, and Sony and Microsoft. And for what? I don't know what they thought they were going to gain. Like, did they think no one would notice the game was broken? I don't get it. And then they try and shift the blame. I don't get it. Like, the people who are running CD Projekt Red have barely held themselves to account. You know, they've done nothing to hold themselves to account. They're using those, like, absurd yellow cards to pin blame on Cyberpunk as an entity, when really the blame should be aimed at the people making those decisions, and they should take responsibility. Forget those branded cards, which places blame on the game itself. They should be taking blame themselves, because it was their fault and their decisions, and it was their grinding and their ridiculous, you know, launch date and releasing a game that was half finished that caused all this. But it just goes to show, man.
Yeah, I think the devs deserve better. Like when I'm talking about CD Projekt Red in this manner, I'm talking about the management, because clearly it was the management's mandate to release the game when it did. Like, remember, this game was supposed to come out in April of 2020. This game was supposed to release 8 months ago. And imagine how the PS4 version and Xbox One version looked 8 months ago. Probably way worse. So they delayed it to November, then they delayed it to December. Clearly, the game needed a full year delay from April. Like, they talk about how, there's going to be the 2 hotfixes and then an update in January and update in February. It sounds like they needed a full year delay from April of 2020 to April of 2021. But for whatever reason, they were like, we need this game out this holiday. You know, new consoles, people are going to buy it. And the thing that's funny is, okay, so you give out these embargoes to reviewers, and you don't want anybody to see how bad the PS4 version and the Xbox version is, right? But then you come out and brag, right? Before the game comes out, they brag about 8 million pre-orders, right? They brag about, you know, basically how much money they're making. And then, like, what, the next day, they're being like, oh, we're so sorry, we'll never do that again, we're sorry for hiding the PS4 version and the Xbox One version from you guys, you know, blah, 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 throwing Microsoft and Sony under the bus, telling them to get refunds, but they didn't talk to any of them about it, knowing that, you know, the refund policy on PlayStation is a little bit strict, a little bit looser on Microsoft's ends, but, you know, not necessarily, the greatest as you would like want it to be. And then like they have the audacity, like there's this quote here when they talk about when PlayStation removed it. And they say, according to our knowledge, starting today, everyone who is not willing to wait for updates and wants to refund their digital copy of the game can do so by submitting a request. That, like, arrogance in that sentence. Now I understand Polish, conversion to English, maybe some stuff gets lost in translation, but everyone who is not willing to wait for updates? Like, what happened to releasing the game as a complete product where, like, the idea that, oh, well, you're entitled, and if you're not willing to wait for an update, like, the game should be running perfectly fine from day one, and you come out here saying that, like, if you're not willing to wait, you could refund it. Like, I don't know, that just, like, I read that and I understand there might be some translation stuff, but, like, it reads like pure arrogance. Like, oh, or they're trying to put it on consumers. So if you're not willing to wait, oh well, I guess Xbox fans are used to waiting, so why not wait for Cyberpunk updates, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, clearly this game needed more time in the oven to get rid of the bugs, to make sure that the PS4 version, the Xbox version, were up to par, and they just decided for whatever reason they needed it out. And then it gets pulled from PlayStation on the verge of Christmas. So anybody who's getting a PS5, is not going to be able to buy the game, right? And Xbox has a little disclaimer in front of it. I've seen it on CNBC and all these different news places when normally games don't reach that high level of mainstream media. And these places are covering how horrible the game is. When by all accounts, if you actually play the game, it's pretty damn good. But they're calling it cyber junk. So now in the mainstream zeitgeist or whatever you want to call it, like, people think Cyberpunk isn't something that's very good, and it's a faulty product. And it's
the kind of thing. If, like, imagine CD Projekt Red was a division of Microsoft. The kind of thing the head of the studio would be fired for, or the head of the division would be fired for. It's the kind of thing, like, you look at all the people who've been fired or ousted from Microsoft. It's on the backs of doing something this stupid, So that's the thing for me, is the accountability. Those studio heads, the board of directors or the execs or whatever who made these decisions to release the game unfinished. They are the people who their head should roll. They're the people who really should look at themselves instead of liking tweets that reaffirm what they've done. For people who are defending them, they should really hold themselves to account. For their employees more than anything. Like, the entitled fans can get a refund. The people who are mad can go and get a refund. The people on the consoles that don't run it well, whatever, they can go and get a refund. But what about the employees, man? What about the employees who've been lied to, who endured all the negative press over the other stuff, who endured, like, leaks about the studio, about crunch, and endured actual crunch, and worked really hard, and they were hoping to go into, like, Christmas holiday season with, like, having launched what they would have hoped to have been, like, a uncontroversial, or at least controversial for the reasons they intended it to be controversial, rather than, like, the fact that it's broken. Like, they should do it for their sake, because it's ultimately the developers that I feel bad for in all of this.
Well, someone said that I sound really angry, and I'm not angry about the game. I'm more flabbergasted that this occurred. Right? I haven't played the game. I'm waiting for the actual next gen version to come out, right? I'm not angry in any regard. I'm just confused and flabbergasted because this is a situation that could have been completely avoided. If they had just delayed the game until early next year, like it probably needed to be, the game would have come out. It would have sold just as well it would have at Christmas. people were going to buy it regardless, and it would have went on to sell 20 to 30 million copies. And CD Projekt Red's reputation among gamers would have been essentially remained the same. Instead, the executives decided they needed the game out. The game wasn't ready. They put it out. It's basically broken on the two other systems, the Xbox One and PS4. Then they start shifting blame. They start apologizing.
I don't get, man.
Like, it's something that could have been completely avoided, which is what makes it so interesting and frustrating, I guess.
Yeah, that's the weirdness of it, is that it just didn't have to happen this way. Like, Monster Hunter World released on PlayStation and Xbox, and then it released on PC like a few months later. Like, PC gamers often have to put up with this like waiting for ports thing, and then the port they get is subpar, Why didn't they just delay the Xbox and PlayStation versions of the game? Like, if the PC version was the showcase version, clearly, the one that worked the best. And, even that was glitchy, but at least it ran properly for most people. I played it on PC, and I came away thinking, this is the game of the gen. This is amazing. And I was sitting there thinking, I can only imagine what the Xbox Series X version is going to look like, because my laptop isn't that powerful, And I had a great time with it, and it's as I said, one of the games I connected with the most since the likes of Prey and Mass Effect and the previous Deus Ex games and the original Deus Ex game. It's like a dream for someone who likes immersive sims. But why didn't they just? There's so many obvious ways this could have been avoided. They just delayed the Xbox and PlayStation versions of the game. Why wouldn't they? They're worried about spoilers.
You have a few people in chat saying that they should have just released it for next gen. Like, our buddy Stickfigure said, they should have delayed the last gen versions. Maybe it runs fine on new consoles. I know it runs fine on
even
Series
that.
X and PS5, but
the problem is because it's a backwards compatible game. There's issues with doing that.
You couldn't just release it only for Xbox One and PS5. It is an Xbox One and PS4 game. So if you're gonna, maybe there's a way where it can only be played on Xbox Series X, but would that be something Cyberpunk would have to do? I don't know where they would have to come up with all that. And yeah, it's true, I haven't played the game, but I also I'm not trashing the game whatsoever. I'm just looking at the decisions that were made by the executives and just finding fault with everything they did. You haven't heard me say one thing about the gameplay because I haven't played it, so I'm not giving my opinion on how the game is. Everything surrounding this is what we're talking about, and there's I think hopefully this situation forces Microsoft and Sony to change their refund policy for the better. Actually adhere to it. Hey, if you've played it less than 2 hours within 14 days, you can get an automatic refund, and it enforces Sony to completely rethink their refund policy. You know what I mean?
Well, that already is the policy.
Yeah, but Microsoft. I know it's the policy on Xbox, but it's not always the case. It's usually up to
my brother got a refund on Xbox before all the uproar.
Sure, it's easier to get an Xbox.
He got not because the game was broken, but because he wanted a physical copy because he heard there was a map in it. So I was like, you should have told them that the game was broken because they won't give you a refund for a stupid reason like that. But they did. They gave him a refund because he said, I want to buy the physical version with the map, and he got his map. So Microsoft have pretty relaxed rules, at least in Europe, because I don't know if it's different in the US, but in Europe we have some kind of state-wide, 2-week refund policy or something for digital goods, no questions asked. And if you invoke that, you get a refund. That's all of European Union, which I guess won't cover the UK in a couple of weeks, but it does right now. So, but it's different rules for different places, I guess.
Yeah, Living Flame says if that sort of thing is true, COD Cold War shouldn't. The certification stuff is pretty interesting. There was a couple good articles about it that I read. James Jorah says people threatening to release it didn't help either. I understand that. There were people being release the game now and really upset, but I mean, clearly the game needed to be delayed. I mean, it's better now after hotfix 1.05. Maybe this week should have been the week it released. Why did they choose December 10th? If they released it this week with the hotfix 1.05 as the base, maybe this all turns into something completely different, right?
It just speaks to like the mismanagement of the product. They should have just literally have given it a full blown year and polished it up, and then I even remember them saying the game's finished, we're just polishing now. Like, but there's just so much wrong with the engine. I don't know. It's almost like I'm not even like, this isn't a commentary about the game because I personally love it. Like, I gave it 5 out of 5. I love the game. I absolutely love it. It's one of the first game in years that I've actually like played and then gone back and played again straight away because of how much I loved it. But it's just the weirdness about why they tried to slip this one under the rug, because the past gen versions aren't just broken; they are like virtually unplayable.
It makes you think how much time was actually given to make those versions. Like, clearly this game seems like a PC game first and foremost, right? Like, built for PC, and then like the Xbox One and PS4 versions were essentially afterthoughts. But it makes you question like how much like time and effort went into making those PS4 and Xbox versions, because it runs fine on the Series X and PS5 as it should, because two next gen powerhouses, right?
I will say, right, this is something, because I've asked around like industry people who work at AAA studios and stuff like that. There is like this industry wide thing where they're downplaying the effect that COVID has had on their pipelines and stuff like that. There's this industry-wide thing. And one person said to me that one thing that studios would often do is they would use a support studio to handle a port. So like in the case of Titanfall, for example, the Titanfall for 360, I believe, was handled by someone else, not Respawn specifically.
I forget who, but most recently, Forza Horizon 4's Series X and S port was done by Panic Button.
Well, there you go. So that's something that a lot of studios would do, but apparently, with COVID and everyone having to work from home, the sort of like the amount of availability for support studios has decreased. Like, everyone is trying to get support studios to help them navigate the extra problems with COVID. And I expect that like CD Projekt Red probably could have done with more support to handle those ports. Maybe they couldn't have gotten it. But that's at that point is when you speak up and you admit that you can't produce the results because, COVID or whatever the reason is, you stand up and admit to your fans, this is why we're delaying the game. This is how long we're delaying it for, because we want to give you the quality. And yeah, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like you say, there's like all these whiny people that are like, oh, don't delay the game again. I hate you. And they send death threats over it, So maybe they put like a huge amount of stock and fear into those people who get mad about the delays. But now they've learned a hard lesson that if you release a broken game, that's the first impression you give the world. And that's why like you got BBC and all the mainstream media jumping on this news story, calling it cyberjunk or whatever. And that's the first impression you've given the world of your game. And it's very hard to pull that back. It's very hard to fix a reputation when you've, put it through a shredder like that. And it's devastating because CD Projekt Red is one of my favorite devs, like BioWare before it. And look at BioWare now, I literally thought when I completed Cyberpunk, man, they just don't make them like that anymore. Because they don't. There's like Rockstar, and that's it. Rockstar and CD Projekt Red. Like, who else makes games on that level? They're a Naughty Dog and Sony Santa Monica, But as an Xbox and a PC gamer, I don't really get access to those.
The thing that's gonna happen probably in the near term is that a lot of employees are gonna leave. The company, just like a lot of employees left after CD Projekt Red, because if you read some of those Glassdoor reviews, it's not necessarily a great place to work at. And I know like they can come back. They just would have to really fix the game. And a lot of people, I've seen a couple people in chat saying like, oh well, people will forgive them by the time Witcher 4 comes out, and maybe that's the case. I've even seen some people say that Microsoft should step in now, considering their stock price dropped 45%, and buy them. But the thing is, like, I don't think they fit Microsoft's style. I don't think Microsoft would want them. Clearly, there's a problem in the upper management at CD Projekt Red. And I don't think Microsoft would want to bring that on, because they would probably have to shuffle out the executive leadership team at CD Projekt Red.
Yeah, CD Projekt Red is a weird one for Microsoft because, like you say, they'd have to fire a lot of people because of the overlap. CD Projekt Red are kind of like Rockstar in that they only make games every now and then without Rockstar's GTA Online, which is like constant engagement. So like, what does CD Projekt Red have really that Microsoft wants? They don't really want GOG.com because they've got their own platform already. And also CD Projekt Red, they only own the rights to like Cyberpunk and The Witcher insofar as the original IP holders and the contracts say they do, which creates issues potentially. I know we've talked about before on the show about how anal Microsoft's lawyers can be when it comes to IP, which is why we never got MechWarrior on backwards compatibility. Even though Microsoft owns the MechWarrior IP, the lawyers aren't convinced the legalese in the contract is airtight enough for them to put it on backwards compatibility. It's really strange.
It's also the reason why the WB talks stalled, because they couldn't work out a lot of the IP issues, right?
Yeah, like the whole Warner Brothers IP, like all of its IP, like it basically doesn't own any of it, like fully.
And that's
like it owns.
Yeah, CD Projekt Red doesn't own
so
Witcher,
weird.
And they don't own Cyberpunk. So you have this situation.
They own rights.
Where it would cost a shit ton of money, right? Even at 40% off because of their screw ups, they don't own any of their own IPs. A lot of the people would leave because they're fed up with the executive team's decisions. You'd have to completely overhaul the executive team. Like, that's the studio that, like, they take too long to make games, and clearly not even long enough, because this game should have been not have come out until next year. Definitely not what Microsoft is looking for.
Yeah, I don't know. What I do know is that CD Projekt Red will polish it up. They'll get it back out there, and a lot of the issues will be solved. But I think some of the issues that I've seen online have just been hyperbole. Like I saw some people like moaning about certain things with the open world, like the cars don't have AI, for example. They're just part of the backdrop. That's because Cyberpunk isn't a sandbox game. It's just set in an open world, but it's not a sandbox game. It's a narrative game like The Witcher with a connected sort of open world-ish area. It's not a sandbox game. So why would the cars have AI? It's not like Grand Theft Auto where you creating car pileups and making them all blow up, and there's all crazy physics sandbox mayhem going on. It's not just cars, and it's not Grand Theft Auto. It's a narrative adventure game, basically. So, like, people complaining about that, I think, misunderstand what the game is. It's not necessarily a bug. It's just designed differently. Designed to look pretty. It's not designed to function like a sandbox. Some people wanted to hate the game before it even launched. Like, I know tons of people, especially in games journalism, who they wanted to hate Cyberpunk. They wanted to hate the game. They don't like the sexuality in the game. Often American writers who are very sensitive to these sorts of things, sensitive to the violence, whatever. I don't know, but there were like piles of legitimate issues with the game, like the epilepsy, the lack of accessibility features, the crashing, the how broken it is on past-gen consoles and stuff like that. So it was just sort of this perfect storm of people wanting to hate it and then giving them legitimate reasons to hate it by being unfinished, and then making it even worse with these yellow blocks of text that had lies in them, and then throwing Microsoft and Sony under the bus, pissed off Sony pulling the game at 3 a.m. in Europe. It's just a perfect storm of mismanagement and immaturity, and hopefully some of the execs of that studio learn their lesson. But I've got a feeling that probably they won't.
Yeah, and I'm gonna make a transition here. RDX Son of Fett says Halo looking pretty good now because now you can transition this to Halo Infinite because they gave their update, which was a fantastic update. Kudos to them to being so transparent, and they talk about how they're going to, what they're focusing on graphically and all the different feature sets that weren't enabled during the July game showcase, blah, 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 blah. They talk about all that stuff, and they give the new release date of fall 2021. Now, you had a pretty interesting counterpoint on Windows Central. And now with the addition of the Cyberpunk stuff, where clearly the game needed to be delayed, and the problem being the last-gen consoles, the thing with Halo is, should Microsoft drop the Xbox One version of Halo?
Yeah, that was like something... So people on Windows Central were arguing about that on Slack. Mm-hmm. They were just arguing about like back and forth, like this proves that they should drop the past-gen version. And there's other people were like, no, they shouldn't do it. And then one of the editors just said, I want both of those articles written. So that's how those articles came about, But, Brendan Lowry, who is our Halo fanboy, super nerd, he knows like all of the lore inside out and backwards. I'm so glad he handles the Halo stuff because, like, you know how I feel about Halo. But like,
well, yeah. So can you apologize right now to 343 and everybody for your slander about Halo looking like a Lego game? Can you apologize? Go, come on, I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
Okay, the new renders look not like a Lego game. Maybe more like Lego Technic, something like that.
Oh, please. You were really impressed when I talked to you about it. You said, no, this looks good.
Nah, it does look good. The renders look really good. They look far more impressive, but it's remains to be seen. I need to see that shit in motion, man. I need to see it in motion before like I can completely vindicate them. But it does go to show that a lot of the people who were like mad about Halo's delay are maybe looking at Cyberpunk now and thinking, ooh, maybe it was a good idea it was delayed. But I just wish studios would be a bit more upfront about how COVID's impacting their pipelines and stuff. Maybe they don't want to talk about it because it'll spook shareholders and they'll be like, oh, the game's going to be delayed if COVID's impacting them and we better pull our money out, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's why they're not talking about COVID as more than they are. But, a lot of people I speak to in the industry talk about COVID being a big issue. It's just, for some reason, it never presents in the marketing. I suppose like they want everything to seem positive, or
maybe it sounds like an excuse. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they don't want it to sound like an excuse or whatever, but there comes a point when reality sets in and you can't get the support studios because they're all stacked with work, everyone working from home and all that kind of stuff, because support studios like are generally set up to work from home, or they're generally set up to work remotely because they have to work with remote assets a lot of the time. So I don't know.
Well,
but it looked good is what I'm saying.
Are you surprised that Halo Infinite, I guess, got the full year delay? Like, because there were rumors, I was hearing that Microsoft wanted it out this fiscal year, like by July. And full delay all the way to fall, obviously no longer in this fiscal year. Are you surprised that Microsoft gave them the entire year to make sure that Halo is as good as it can be?
I'm not surprised because I think when did they announce that it was fully delayed?
Well, they announced the initial delay that it wouldn't meet launch a couple weeks after the July game showcase.
The whole year delay. When was that? When was that
they announced that right before the Game Awards. It was literally like 2 days before the Game Awards. It was that Tuesday before the Game Awards, I believe.
Well, I think it's clearly it needed it. And I think it sort of speaks to what a lot of us have been saying, that Halo needs to carry the brand a bit. If Halo's mediocre in 2020, maybe like Halo launched in spring of 2021 and it was like mediocre, that'd be like terrible. Like, make it as good as it can be, make it as big and varied and interesting and next gen, quote unquote, as it can be, and give it the development time that it needs. Because I don't think 343 Industries is going to go back to work in the office anytime soon. I don't think any of us are, frankly. Hopefully, but maybe not. And I think you've got to account for that fact as well. So I don't know. I think they're in the right to delay it for a whole year, and hopefully Halo fans get what the game that they deserve, because we've been waiting a pretty long time at this point.
Yeah, and it does.
But I think Cyberpunk vindicates that decision a fair bit, I think.
See, I want to believe that too, but I think the reason Cyberpunk needed to be delayed is different than the reason Halo was being delayed. Like, Cyberpunk clearly needed delayed because the performance wasn't up to par on last-gen consoles, and they needed time to squash the bugs, right? Like, with Halo, that entire press release, that entire update talked about the graphical overhaul that they're pulling from, that they're doing for the game. Now, we had heard nothing that the game runs poorly on Xbox One, right? It really did seem like the reason they delayed it was because of the complaints that the game looked like, as you would say, a Lego game, right? It looked like a Lego game. Craig and how he looked. Not necessarily that the game was performing poorly, but that the game looked poorly. So I think maybe they needed to be delayed for two separate reasons. Although it is possible the game just doesn't run well on the Xbox One. But I don't know. Like, they're definitely. See, the Xbox One is like, oh well, Cyberpunk runs doesn't look good and runs like garbage, right? But then you got a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, which looks incredible and plays great, and Metro Exodus, and all these other games that are look and play great on Xbox One, right? And I think, considering 343 is a first party studio, I don't think the game's going to run poorly on Xbox One. I don't think it has run as good as the Series X version. I think what they're just going to do is make the game look prettier. And they're given all the time needed to do that, to make sure they make it look good. So I don't think they needed to be delayed for similar reasons. However, there is a case to be made about should they drop the Xbox One version. Now, our buddy, Mediocre Ed, on Xbox Era when I was there 2 weeks ago, he says he thinks, not that he knows, but he predicts that they will drop the Xbox One version, and it'll just be Series X and Series S and PC. And, reading the point of Windows Central, obviously some people at Windows Central believe that the Xbox One version should be dropped. I'm going to ask you this because I have my own opinion on it. Do you think the Xbox One version will be dropped from Halo? That when Halo Infinite launches on November 15th, 2021, the 20-year anniversary of the original Halo game, right? That's when the game's launching. Can we all agree on that? Like, that is going to be the day the game launches, right? I mean, it's two lined up perfectly not to launch it on the anniversary of the first Halo, right?
I agree.
Like, so November 15th, 2021, do you think the game releases for Xbox One at the same time as Series X?
I do think that. I think that, surely, over the years, making the Master Chief Collection, porting the game backwards and forwards, making it for Steam, all the different levels of hardware, all the knowledge Microsoft must have gained and experience porting those engines a bajillion times, surely they can make a version of Halo Infinite that scales to the hardware. I would be pretty shocked if they didn't release on Xbox One, especially since they've said they would.
Yeah,
they said a long time ago they would, and they've not even hinted that they could drop it. There's no hint or even rumor that they will drop it for the past gen version. Like, the whole idea of dropping it really comes from anxiety over how much of a calamity Cyberpunk has been. And also, frankly, some of the cross-gen games just haven't been that great. Like I couldn't like we talked about Assassin's Creed having the screen tearing because on the Series X and other issues and stuff like that, performance problems, blah blah blah. And there's always this sort of weird mess when it comes to cross-gen games and games that you know things can fall between the cracks and things get missed and the different architecture means more work for the devs and stuff like that. And there's a sort of knee-jerk reaction or like this idea that if you take those developers off the past gen port, then it means the next gen version will be better for it. Um, you know, that needn't necessarily be the case because if they've built an engine and technology that scales properly to meet the hardware, that's exactly what Microsoft has been doing with smart delivery and backwards compatibility. I would hope that they have the know-how and the knowledge to make a polished version that runs and performs well on all the systems that it's said it's supposed to be coming to. So I would put my faith in that personally. And even if you don't put, even without faith, I just think they'll release it on those systems because they've said they're going to.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you drop it, well, someone's going to bring up, well, Phil Spencer and Matt Booty said they were coming. They lied, right? Just like they still bring up, like, well, Phil Spencer said VR was coming to Xbox Scorpio, and it didn't. He lied, right? So there are going to be people that trot that out. Be like, well, you promised, and it's true, they did say it would come to Xbox One. There's also the whole free-to-play angle, which I think has a lot to do with it. They want Halo Infinite to be played by everybody. And I don't know how many Xbox Series consoles will be sold by the time Halo Infinite comes out. But I would imagine there'll still be plenty of people playing on Xbox One, and they want all those people to play too. But then the argument is, if you're delaying the game because it looks bad, then won't the Xbox One version look the worst? So if it's about making the game look better, shouldn't you drop the version that is going to, that people aren't going to really gravitate to, and it's free to play on PC, and that's where the majority of people might play it. And I don't know, like I understand the logic behind it, but like Halo Infinite's been built around the Xbox One the entire time. Like there's compromises you have to make because of the cross-gen gameplay. And it's probably too late at this point to do anything about that. So the best you can do is just like polish and get as much performance and visual quality out of these systems as you possibly can. I don't really think there's much of a comparison between Cyberpunk and Halo Infinite, and I think it's an easy comparison, right? Look at Cyberpunk. It should have been delayed. Look at Halo. That was supposed to come out. They delayed it for a year. Cyberpunk should have did what Halo did, but I think they needed delays for different reasons. And I'm just happy Halo's getting that full delay. Can you imagine if it came out this year? Like, without a delay, what it would have looked like and probably played like. And same thing with like Cyberpunk if it had released back in April. So but when you even, it's still this big question mark of like, what happened, Jez? How do you go from games on track? We got all the marketing lined up. Master Chief is literally in everything for Series X. We're good to go. July Game Showcase comes. Week later, later. We're releasing a year from now. Like, how does that still? I still want to know. And I'm afraid to ask anybody about that. Like, I'm afraid. Like, I would love to just get Phil on the side and just like, Phil, lay it on me, bro. Like, what happened? How do you go from the game's coming, no problem, and we're hyping this thing up to literally, nope, sorry, needs another year. Like, like I want to know the story behind this. Like, I want to know what happened. Because I guarantee you there's a juicy story, and that will probably get revealed by Jason Schreier at some point in a new book or an article on Bloomberg News or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's something clearly went down there. Like the shift in personnel. It's so cool, by the way, seeing Joseph Staten lead the Halo Infinite update. That really speaks to his seniority at 343 Industries now, and
he gets Halo. That's the most important thing. He understands Halo like that.
Yeah.
his bookend on his update when he talks about like this is the Halo that we always envisioned back in 2000, but with time and innovations, like this is what we thought Halo could be, and it's like him leading the charge and righting the wrongs. Like I feel like Halo's in good hands, and
He's the nicest guy I've ever interviewed as well.
I think I met
He's
him.
just like such a great guy.
I think I met him in E3 2016. He seemed like a really nice guy, and I
Yeah.
can't, like I think I'm more. There was always that sense of like, man, can 343 do it, right? Like, and I was always this year, like especially after the reveal, I was like, oh man, they may not. I don't know if they have the right leadership in place, and because obviously a lot of this comes down to leadership. Look at what the Cyberpunk stuff. All that comes down to leadership. They have a poor leadership system at CD Projekt Red, and they're essentially the cause of everything that's going wrong. And I kind of felt the leadership at 343 wasn't the best, and they were making some wrong decisions. But like with Joseph Staten in charge, essentially, like I feel 343 is in better hands, and that when Halo does come out next holiday, that it's going to be great. And just think of how big next year could be for Xbox and Game Pass. Like they're essentially could release Halo Infinite, a Forza Horizon 5, and Starfield exclusively for Xbox and also day one in Game Pass. Like you're talking about
Could end up being a really big year. Yeah,
like Game Pass is at, I think Game Pass is already over 20 million. And you're talking like they really haven't had the big, huge, as you mentioned, blockbuster games launching day one on the service because Xbox themselves really haven't produced very many. And I would say, yeah, Gears is that big, like blockbuster thing, but it's also on the decline a little bit because of how much Xbox kind of has been focusing on it.
It's like Gears is popular amongst existing Xbox users, but Halo has that brand power that goes beyond Xbox.
So I mean, like Forza Horizon, Starfield, Halo, you're talking taking Game Pass even further, and then you start adding all the other titles that will start coming. Like you understand and can see what Microsoft is going for here. It's just a matter of getting to that point. And I do think Starfield is launching next year. Call me crazy, but I do think it is. Now, I don't know if it's going to be exclusive or not, but it doesn't really... I mean, if for just the sake of this argument, we already know it's launching day one into Game Pass. And that's what I think Game Pass has been missing. Yeah, you get your Doom Eternals and your Controls and the big third-party games. They come to Game Pass, but sometimes a year later, sometimes 4 months later. What would it be like if Doom Eternal launched into Game Pass the first day? Or if Cyberpunk launched into Game Pass the first day? Like, what would that do for the service? What type of domino effect would it have? And, I mean, clearly, Gears
even if Starfield did launch on PlayStation anyway, and if it is coming out next year, there's a high chance Starfield will, because you have to presume maybe it's like 90% finished on PlayStation already. If we're talking that it's coming next year, it's probably close to being finished on PlayStation. Would Microsoft really throw away all that dev work just to get an exclusive? I don't know, but let's just assume that Starfield does hit PlayStation as well. It'll make headlines that game's effectively free if you get it on Xbox.
Well, yeah, that's the point. Is that like Starfield would be that huge game, and it's like in Game Pass day one, as like finally a big third party. Well, it wouldn't be third party anymore, but you get my point, right? Like it's that game on the level of potentially a Fallout or an Elder Scrolls, like that kind of power in the Game Pass. It could draw people to the ecosystem in ways that Gears never could or Forza never could. New IP from Bethesda, like it has that there's something to be said about that. So it's gonna be. I don't know. It's gonna be awesome. Tim says, "Hey guys, happy Christmas! With Flight Sim only coming to Series X consoles or Series consoles, do you think it'll be the first game to use some of the next gen features?" The first game to use some of the next gen features, Jez. What do you think? I mean, Like RDNA
This is
2
tough. You
features?
have to like, sorry, you have to think about games that are sort of like, first of all, they're built specifically for next gen. There's like no cross-gen version. There's no like there's no like low-end PC version either. Like there's no Windows 7 version, for example, or Windows 8 version. It's like it requires DirectX 12 or it requires DirectX 12 Ultimate. Like those kind of games that we're really talking about. So are we going to see those games in 2021? Probably not. I think we'll probably first see those games that are built from the ground up for next gen maybe in 2022, 2023. If I had to guess, it's hard to really estimate because God knows what 2023 looks like. Do we like I don't want to say that State of Decay 3, for example, is going to be a graphical showcase for next gen because, I just don't know if Undead Labs has that pedigree of, or even if they want to go down that route of photorealism, like if that CGI trailer suggests at me, like that's my worry with some of these CGI trailers is that they overhype what the visuals are going to be like. But let's forget State of Decay in that case. But something like Hellblade, like is that Hellblade 2 confirmed to be on Xbox One or is that next gen
No,
only?
there was announced for next gen only. Like when you go look at the pages on Xbox.com, Everwild just Series X or just Series consoles, Hellblade just Series consoles. Like the only ones that have the old
Hellblade
ones are
Unreal
still
Engine?
yeah Unreal Engine, and I think Phil said they're gonna somebody mentioned that it was just gonna transition Unreal Engine 5. But yeah, like
So like
there's
you can imagine that. Sorry, go on.
well, I was just gonna say there's not a lot of games from first party that are confirmed Xbox One. Like there's that Ask Dust Falls game, which is a global publishing deal that I think's coming out next year that'll come on both, and like Psychonauts and stuff. But the majority of the announced games, like Forza Motorsport and all that stuff, they're only announced for the next gen consoles and PC. So
So I'm expecting Hellblade 2 to be that game that where they partner deeply with Epic for, Unreal Engine and they really push it out as being a graphical showcase for the next gen system. Like the fact that they said this whole trailer was shot in engine or whatever, like that hopefully gives us some inkling of how good it's going to look. And the trailer is still mind-blowing in its quality and its detail. If that's the sort of in-engine gameplay quality we can expect from Hellblade 2, at least even if it approaches that, I expect Hellblade 2 might be the first game that really, the sort of Rise when I played Rise for Xbox One, I remember thinking, my God, this just looks incredible. And I think like Hellblade 2 could be that game for Xbox, but
yeah.
don't know.
Living
Don't
Flame
know.
says it's not Lego anymore, Jez. It's Mega Blocks, Mega Baby, Mega Blocks.
Mega Blocks. Well, I think it could be Lego Technic. What is it called? Lego Technic? The more advanced Lego.
Yeah. I don't know. RDX says Master Chief Collection has two versions that are press the button on the fly. 343's got this. Xbox One will be there. I mean, I agree with you. Xbox One's not getting dropped for a lot of different reasons. I think people just kind of want... I think people want a little bit of their purchase of the next-gen consoles to be a little bit more justified, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
maybe.
yeah, now it is just Series X, but it kind of goes against everything 343 wants to do with the title. Like, they want as many people as possible to play it. That's why it's on Xbox One. So, and it was built on Xbox One to begin with. So, I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe they will drop it, but I don't think they will. I don't think there's a chance they do. Chris says, assuming Xbox One report does come, or when will it be dropped during the 10-year cycle? Assuming Xbox One report does come, when will it be dropped? I'm assuming you mean that eventually, when will support for like Halo get dropped? I would say a couple years into it, because the plan is to put xCloud on Xbox One consoles, right, Jez? Phil's talked about that. And
Well, it's talked about as a possibility.
As a possibility,
like
but we're talking years.
2021.
Yeah, but
xCloud gets upgraded to Xbox Series X quality.
My point is that I think the question is, when is Halo Infinite going to stop getting support on Xbox One? Because they've talked about Halo Infinite getting a 10-year cycle. I think there's no way that game is supported on Xbox One for 10 years. I look at more like a Destiny situation where after a couple years, Destiny 1 was kind of, it stopped getting updates. It didn't get any of the new DLC, any of that stuff. It just kind of got stopped getting support. And I think the same thing will happen with Xbox One for Halo Infinite. That, say in 2023, 2024, it's just like, all right, Xbox One support for Halo Infinite's done. And if you do want to play the game on Xbox One, well, you can stream it on xCloud. Because xCloud at that point will be on the consoles. But if you really want to play it, you got to play it on the new consoles or on PC. I don't think it'll have support for the entire 10 years they want to run Halo Infinite. But that's just me. Crap Gamers Daddy says, Surly Phil and Company had a lineup planned for 2021 before the Infinite delay. Tell me they just didn't say, well, Forza and a bunch of indies for 2021. There must be more coming. Yeah, I'm sure there's always a plan, and there's always targets. They have internal roadmaps for every one of their single releases from their studios, but COVID wrecked a lot of stuff this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of the titles that were planned for 2021 potentially get pushed to 2022, or something that maybe was in the beginning of 2021 gets pushed to the end of 2021. But still, I think a lot of this was already kind of known, especially when you go out and buy all those studios and you have an idea of when those studios are going to be able to start putting out those games, that they were planning on Halo being the linchpin of 2020. They were going to ride out 2021 with some third-party deals with games like Warhammer and things like that, and then some high-profile indie games, and then go into 2022 just banging. And, reality got in the face. Am I saying this right, Jez? Is that kind of what you think too?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's like, I think a lot of these publicly traded companies, they want to downplay COVID to waylay shareholder fears, maybe. I don't know. But it does feel like that sometimes with COVID. Like, you can't shift an entire workforce and their culture to a work from home and your development tools to remote overnight if you're not set up for it. Some studios are set up for it, and some are set up for it. Like Moon Studios, for example. They always talk about the benefits of being a remote studio. They talked about that in interviews before, back when it was weird to be a remote worker. Now everyone's a remote worker. It's or a lot of us are. So yeah, I expect more delays to happen next year. It's kind of weird to think about it, but there's going to be sort of like a big kink where COVID affected everything and then went away. Like, for example, COVID caused record engagement for video games this year. COVID created a lot of opportunity for tech companies to pull in extra money from everyone who's stuck at home. Created virality for some games that might not have had virality otherwise. And it created engagement records and server problems. Like, World of Warcraft has gone back to its... World of Warcraft has more players now than it's had in the last 10 years, Blizzard has said. And that's not because the game suddenly got better. It's just because everyone's stuck at home. So, they do downplay the way COVID's affected things, and I do think there's going to be a tail end, even when, say, like 60% of the population gets vaccinated by the summer. Or let's be optimistic here. Let's say that happens. I still think there's still going to be like lingering effects on the game industry when it comes to delays and this sort of lag that's been created by working from home and then going back to work in the office and stuff like that. So I don't know. We just have to see how it plays out. But ultimately, it's like, a few months here and there.
Yeah.
There's bigger things to worry about right now than the game being delayed for a few months.
QTI Grizzly says, what about the stream machine for old Xboxes? I'm assuming you mean xCloud. And we kind of just mentioned that and they even talked about how cloud gaming on PC and iOS is coming next spring. Yeah. We're gonna go for a little bit longer since it's the last show and we haven't done one in 2 weeks. So if you guys, got any questions, make sure you put them in chat because we'll answer them in a minute. And I want to thank everybody for being here. You guys made 2021 a great year for me on YouTube, at least. I know it was a shitty year overall, but you guys all being here watching the videos, it means a lot. So I want to thank all of you for that. Yeah, hit the like button, subscribe, you know the drill. But before we answer some questions, Jez, best and worst of 2020. What was your best game? Well, I already know what your best game is. Cyberpunk. It's your favorite, right? And
Yeah.
So what would be your biggest disappointment or the worst thing for 2020 gaming wise for you?
Well, my top game was Cyberpunk 2077, but also like tied really closely with Wasteland 3. Like I really love Wasteland 3 and I love Cyberpunk 2077 for like similar reasons. They just let you play how you want to play. And there's so many games like increasingly just don't let you do that. So Cyberpunk and Wasteland were definitely my highlights of the year. But my biggest disappointment, man, I went on about it earlier, but it was Watch Dogs, man, implemented ray tracing. It ruined the game for me. Like when I had Watch Dogs before the game launched, it looked great. It had like screen space reflections and it looked really good. And then when the game actually launched proper, they added the ray tracing in, and there was just all of a sudden everything had these grainy pixels all over it. Like no bus in London is that shiny, and the River Thames looked awful, and all this stuff. And it's like it made the game look worse. And like when I tried playing it again, I just couldn't do it because everything just looked pixelated and horrible. So that the ray tracing implementation, the promise of ray tracing is probably my biggest disappointment for this year so far. Because like, there's no good examples of ray tracing on Xbox Series X right now. Even though like it was sold to us as like a selling point, Yeah. You go on the store, it'll come up there in a big banner. This game has ray tracing, and it's like big deal. It looks like someone sneezed pixels all over your game, Watch Dogs. So that's my biggest disappointment. I didn't really have a gaming disappointment per se.
I mean, my biggest gaming disappointment was probably Halo got delayed. Even though in the end that probably turned out to be a good thing, or will be a good thing. But there was just something like new console, a brand new Halo, day one. It was going to be something special. Because most of the games I anticipated this year, well, you know what? I'm going to say it, and I'm probably going to get some blowback for this. But I would say probably the biggest disappointment for me, if I can't use Halo's infinite delay, is Last of Us 2's story. Not the gameplay. The gameplay, if you had to just rate the gameplay of Last of Us Part 2, it's 10 out of 10. Wins Game of the Year easily. Like, the gameplay in that game is impeccable. The way the game looks, the way the game sounds, the voice acting.
Just so I can be like, Rand, here's why you're wrong.
Well, I mean, maybe you like my buddy Gopher. Me and him have discussions all the time. He loves Last of Us Part 2, and he loves the story. And I'm just like, I don't like the story at all. So for me, the biggest disappointment is the story of Last of Us Part 2. I do not like it.
You played on PS4, right?
I played it on the PS4 Pro, yeah.
I think, does my brother have a Pro? I can't remember. I think my brother just has a base PS4, but that's probably good enough to play it, right? I might borrow my brother's PlayStation 4 and knock it out one of the days. Because I've got 2 weeks off work. That's the longest I've ever had time off in about 7 years.
And let's see what else. Best game? Oh man, that's a tie between Ghost of Tsushima and Ori. And you know what? I'm still a little upset that Ori got shut out at the Game Awards. Like I feel like that was wrong for everything that the game did, whether it's art direction or the score or whatever. Like that game should have won an award, and it didn't, and I think that's I know that feels wrong.
It goes to show like where games journalists' minds are, and it ain't with Xbox. You know?
Yeah, but the game even came. I think a lot of it had to do with Hades coming out, getting coming out of like early access and being as good as it was. That kind of got the token indie game nomination for Game of the Year. Because I would imagine Doom Eternal was only in it because Cyberpunk wasn't there. Can you imagine if Cyberpunk did come out in November and
I don't care. I don't care what anyone says right now. I'm going to be really controversial. Ori is a way fucking better game than Hades. I don't care what anyone says. Come at me all you want. Ori is a better game than Hades, and it deserved to win some of those awards. End of.
People are saying I'm overselling Last of Us 2 mechanics. I don't know about that. Like it's a pretty amazing stealth game, and if Perfect Dark can do stealth like that game, then Perfect Dark's going to be amazing. Like I played Last of Us 2 like a complete stealth, like I was Sam Fisher, and it was phenomenal. The only problem I had was with the story. I thought it was very, very mediocre. And but hey, it seems like everybody in the gaming media loved it because it was a coronation of Naughty Dog at the show. But yeah, I was a little disappointed. Like so for me, Ghost of Tsushima and Ori, I think are the two best games of the year. And I think Ori probably would be number one if the version I played of it for review was like the version that exists today on Series X.
Yeah, I think the fact that it launched a bit rough probably hurt its mind share, which is ultimately like when it comes to like winning the Oscars, almost like winning like the Game Awards, it's like making sure your game is in the mind share of the panel who decides these awards. And like I think by launching in a rough state, Ori didn't do itself any favors. But then you can look at one big criticism the Game Awards I really like is the fact that Jedi Fallen Order wasn't eligible last year, but all the panel forgot about it this year. So it wasn't eligible for this year either because it wasn't in the mindshare. So like you're gonna get a scenario where like with the Oscars, where you have like PR agencies mailing people who are on the panel and saying, "Don't forget about our game. It launched in December and it should be, should be considered." But because all the hype is with Hades, like Ori got forgotten.
Yeah.
In some way, I don't know. Ori deserved way. Ori's a better game than Hades. It is. I'm sorry. Sorry, internet.
Brian Hopkins says, "Just give me some hope. Where's XCOM 3? 2022 reveal? Or are you and I left playing XCOM 2 for a long while? Hi, Rand. Keep up the great work, guys."
Haven't they already hinted at XCOM 3?
Well, didn't they just release a new XCOM?
No,
Chimera or whatever?
No. We don't talk about that, Rand. We don't talk about Chimera Squad. But around the time they launched Chimera Squad, they did. I don't know. Maybe I'm just imagining it. I'm sure they said, "Yeah, we've still got plans for the XCOM franchise or whatever." They have to make another XCOM, man. That franchise is pretty damn huge, and it's pretty much, I don't know, one of the biggest things that studio makes, if not the biggest. So I don't know. I expect there'll be an XCOM 3. There has to be. Of course, there'll be an XCOM 3.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really hope on that vein. I hope there's a Gears Tactics 2 that sort of like tries to be as complicated as XCOM, because Gears Tactics just did not have the staying power of XCOM. It just didn't.
Face wants to know, what's up, Brandon Jazz? Did you see the latest gameplay for Returnal, and are you interested in getting the game? I mean, I'll get the game regardless. I like the setting, the sci-fi kind of story it's going for, like kind of time travel-ish. The only issue I have with the game is that it's supposed to be like a roguelite, and I'm not a fan of roguelites. So we'll have to see how they do the whole roguelite aspect where like each run is new, and how like the upgrades and all that stuff carry over. People say Hades has kind of transformed the roguelite genre and changed it for the better, and maybe Returnal was trying to do something similar, but like it looks interesting. I like the setting. I'm just not sure about the core roguelite game that it is. So we'll see when a game comes out in March if it's I mean, I've liked a lot of other House Marquee games, so like but but this is kind of their first like full step up. Stodgy Caesar says, Rand, is it true the initiative has 2 teams? There's been that rumor going around for a while, Jez, that the initiative is working on 2 games. Do you believe that? Or do you think that's just more just rumors?
I have no idea. I think that's just rumors because, like, I think I talked about on a podcast previously where, like, I'd heard, you know, I think they've been public with this. Like, Initiative has publicly said that they're keeping their team small and nimble and stuff like that. So if they are making a second game, maybe it's like a smaller game, a mobile game, something simple. You know, like how Mojang made like Cobalt as a side project for fun or whatever. Like maybe something like that. But I don't think they're not like a 2 AAA game studio.
Yeah,
I don't think. Could be wrong, but who
I mean,
knows?
maybe,
Know.
I don't know. I just don't see them having 2 teams. But we'll see. Zeke says, is Everwild single player? Well, we don't know much about Everwild, but judging from the trailers, it does seem like it'll be there'll be a focus on co-op. I would say you probably can play the game single player, but
yeah, like I think like whenever you see like in a trailer where there's like people coming together to work together, it's always a massive hint that co-op is going to be a focus. And I think Rare's seen like, you know, a lot of people think like, oh, Rare's not as good as they used to be, but I hate to tell you, Sea of Thieves is by far their most successful game ever by a mile. So if you consider the fact they've had so much success making games with shared story spaces, I wouldn't be surprised if that's where they put their emphasis. But
you know, the funny thing is, Sea of Thieves is probably, if you had to look at the games that came out for Xbox One this gen, and if you say Halo is just in a league by itself, you could probably make the argument that Sea of Thieves is probably the biggest game that Microsoft had outside of Halo. Definitely bigger than any of the 2 Gears games, right?
Yep.
Probably
of 2020,
probably bigger than the Forza Horizon games, or maybe not in totality. Maybe if you add up Forza Horizon 2, 3, and 4, and what it's done, maybe it's bigger than Sea of Thieves. But
yeah, in copies sold, but like Sea of Thieves is just like been such a success story.
And I wonder how many Game Pass subs it drove, and how many subscribers kept subscribed because of it and stuff like that. So even though like
I'm gonna be interested to when like Game Pass for mobile devices ramps up and maybe Sea of Thieves has like a better touch controls and stuff, like how big it could potentially grow. Because, you know, so one thing I've always complained about with Sea of Thieves is that I never liked the combat. I always thought the sword play was really basic and boring, and like the guns just feel inaccurate. I know they're designed like that because they're pirate weapons or whatever, but and I know like the emphasis isn't necessarily on combat in Sea of Thieves either, but like the simplicity in the combat, ironically, makes it work pretty well with touch controls potentially, because you don't have to perform like complicated, you know, thumbstick turns or combos or whatever. So like I wonder like where the future of that game could go, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just happy for Rare, really. They're a cool team.
JD Gamer basically repeats Stodgy's question about Initiative having 2 teams. Me and Jez both don't think so. DMCR says, not to pick sides, how was Sony able to put out Last of Us 2, Ghosts, Demon Souls, and Miles Morales, and Ratchet all in a COVID year, all polished, great graphics? They were like new IP, like or hate. Well, I mean, Last of Us 2, I mean, was supposed to come out in 2019, got delayed. Ghost was, 5 years in development or 4 years? I mean, it was going to come out eventually. Miles Morales, Demon Souls, yeah, I mean, they were all planned to be launch titles, and they made it in. Ratchet, who knows? I mean, Ratchet will be coming sometime next year, but I wonder how soon. Like with Returnal being the next game with the date from Sony of March of 2021, does that imply that Ratchet is after Returnal? Because if it's after, then are we looking at April for Ratchet and Clank? Are we looking at May for Ratchet and Clank? There is already talk that Gran Turismo was removed out of that first half ad, which would imply Gran Turismo is now coming sometime June and later. Um, yeah, I mean maybe Miles, they just added the 60 frames patch with ray tracing. Maybe that's something that was going to be there at launch, but wasn't because of COVID. You don't really know how a lot of these games or where they were in certain things when they were affected, and maybe Insomniac was, were easier to transition working from home. Who knows? But I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily put Last of Us 2 and Ghost in there. Those games have been, you know, in basically done by the time, not finished, but pretty close to being finished by the time COVID kind of really started. It's like rearing its ugly head, essentially. And that's why I think a lot of people don't want to use it as excuse and stuff, because, if Microsoft uses it as an excuse for the games, people just look what Sony's able to do. How are they able to get out all these games with COVID and you're not able to? Like, so they just, it's just one of those things. Crap Gamer's Daddy says, so was the whole seasonal rumor with Perfect Dark actually referring to the eco-terrorism and the weather dynamic? No. Like I said, there was two rumors about Perfect Dark. One being that it was a full reboot, which it ended up being true, and the other being this game set in the Perfect Dark universe that was some sort of episodic title like Hitman, where there'd be like seasons, kind of, where you kind of like how Apex Legends or Fortnite have seasons, something like that. I don't think it had anything to do with eco-terrorism or the weather dynamic. It was just, information that probably was right at one point. Because like games change over the course of game development, and maybe when they were originally coming up with all these ideas for Joanna Dark, originally it could have been, hey, let's just do a Perfect Dark game, but in the universe and not call it Perfect Dark, and we could do some of these cool episodic features or something, and that's someone hears that from somebody at a friend over at Xbox, and that stuff kind of leaks out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder if it's more like maybe Hivebusters is like a blueprint for how like they're gonna do ongoing content for some of these games. Like maybe they're just gonna be like, here's Halo Infinite. By the way, here's a new 3-hour quest. By the way, here's Perfect Dark. Here's a new 3-hour side mission. Stuff like that to keep single player gamers happy within Game Pass and not just the multiplayer gamers. I don't know. Maybe that's where it comes from. I don't know.
Kratopsy says, would you mind if Hellblade 2 runs only at 30 frames and use all the horsepower of Series X for graphics fidelity? It's not a fast-paced game after all. I would imagine it would be very similar to the Pro and the Series X versions, where they had those different modes, where here's the 4K 30 mode, if you want this game to look as gorgeous as it can be. But then we also have a 60 frames mode. So I would imagine Ninja Theory will run both of those. And I'll choose the 60 frames mode. Especially if the game, if it's combat heavy. And I would imagine the combat's going to be expanded upon. Because I don't think you can do Hellblade again with the run-of-the-mill combat. And let's be honest, like, nobody is really holding up Hellblade because of its combat. The combat served its purpose. It was functional, but it wasn't really fleshed out. People liked Hellblade because of the aesthetic, the atmosphere, the storytelling, the voice acting, and the story. Not much was really made much about the gameplay of it, right? So if you're making a sequel to it, you need to improve certain things. And one of the things you need to improve is the combat. And if the combat's going to be a big focus of the game, then it needs to run at a higher frame rate. Now, I guess your question would be, if there was only a 30 frames mode and I could only play that game in 30 frames, would I mind? Yeah, I probably would mind. Maybe I'm getting spoiled with these next-gen consoles, but 60 frames feels so goddamn good that I really don't want to go back and play 30 frames. What do you think, Jez?
Sorry, what was the question?
Would you be okay if Hellblade 2 only ran at 30 frames? Or are you in for the filmic experience? I'm
totally in for the filmic experience with Hellblade.
Yeah, of course you are.
30 frames. It's funny, because I've been playing a lot on PC recently, where it's just like you don't even think 30 frames is a thing on PC. So I'd forgotten what it looked like. Like I play World of Warcraft at 120 frames because I want to get every single scrap of DPS in or whatever. But like I was so used to not seeing 30 frames when I initially put Cyberpunk into resolution mode because on TV it looks blurry when it's in performance mode or whatever. And I was like, my God, is that what 30 frames looks like? Like I'd actually forgotten what it looked like. So, but after like 15 minutes or so, I just adjusted back to it. The filmic experience. I don't know if it's just because like I sit fairly close to my TV, but when it's on my TV, I just hate low resolution. And if I have to sacrifice frames per second in a single player game, I'll do it because I'm not competing against anyone. I'm not going to lose to a CPU because I didn't have better frame rate. So I will take the cinematic. I will take every detail. I'll take every blade of grass with the highest anisotropic filtering you can get. So yeah, I will play it at 30 frames if needs be.
Yeah.
But I don't think we'll necessarily have to. We'll have to wait and see.
JD Gamer says, Jez and Rand, what can Microsoft do to immediately change the narrative that they have no good games and pull more people in their ecosystem? Immediately do? I don't think there's anything they can immediately do.
Well, like there is.
What?
Like when the Bethesda deal closes, they just immediately hit me up and they're like, oh, by the way, Jez, here's a exclusive interview. All Bethesda games are now exclusive.
Well, that's what Aquaman says. Are all Bethesda games going to be exclusive to Xbox? We don't know yet, but me and Jez both think they will be. There'll be some games that come to PlayStation or remain on PlayStation, but I think the vast majority of them will be exclusive. I guess that's something that could immediately change. Yeah, okay, you're right on that. I was thinking like immediately, meaning within the next couple months, which I guess is possible. Like the Bethesda deal is supposed to close early 2021. The one thing is I would say is like a showcase where you show off all these games that we've been talking about and show gameplay so people can see it. And you can kind of have that like moment in 2016 where, Sony showed off God of War and Spider-Man and Detroit and Shadow of the Colossus, and people are like, oh, damn. So that's what's coming to PlayStation? I think Xbox could have that moment too with their first party where people are like, oh, shit. That's what Xbox has? Okay, I'm on board. That could be something that could change, the narrative for them. But yeah, in the short term, 100%, if the Bethesda deal closes in, say, February, and then Phil Spencer has an interview with Jez Corden of Windows Central, which you should hit up Phil about that, being like, give me the exclusive scoop,
No,
you
they only do that with professional game journalists.
Yeah.
Not
and then they say, a lot of the games will be exclusive. Then that could definitely change the narrative immediately.
Indeed.
Yeah. Let's see. What else we got here. Zeke says, Merry Christmas, Rand, and God bless you. Merry Christmas to everybody here who celebrates it, and I hope everybody has a great day. I see the Action Luca in chat. How you doing, Queen? I hope you're well. I was telling Jazz how much I enjoyed playing co-op with you in Demon Souls, and I also told her about Alice in Borderland as well. Jazz, you need to watch that too.
Ooh.
I hope she watches it, and then she'll text me and be like, "You were right, King," and I'll be like, "Goddamn right I was. I'm never wrong about that stuff." Question mark says, hey, keep up the great podcast. I'm going to finish this one tomorrow. I have to go now and wish you and Jez all the best for next year and hope you reach a lot more people. Thank you. I mean, everybody's so nice today. Jez says, hey, don't read any of the troll comments anymore. And that's something I'm going to do. That's a New Year's resolution. I'm not even going to acknowledge the trolls' existence because they're... Yeah, why should they? They're basically non-existent anyways. So no more acknowledging any of the trolls out there. JD Gamer says Microsoft should buy a Sobo. I agree, they should. You can't let them slip away. Although I think one of the reasons they haven't is they're working on a game for Focus Home. So like yeah, that's a studio Microsoft shouldn't let get away.
They should just buy Focus Home. Screw it.
Yeah, maybe they should. Well, the publisher, no. People were like, they need to buy Sega. I don't know about. I think Microsoft looked into buying Sega. Honestly, I think Microsoft looked into Sega, and I don't think they like what they saw. Like,
Yeah, I got a feeling that might be the case too. Like Sega Sammy Holdings or whatever.
Yeah.
They've got their fingers in a lot of pies that Microsoft is not interested in. The deals have to be perfect, man. They have to be companies that line up perfectly. Bethesda was absolutely perfect for Microsoft operation. Same goals, same just same goals really. Same goals, same culture, same everything. Just Bethesda. And it was the right time too. Like ZeniMax clearly wanted an exit. They were clearly starting to milk Bethesda. Like the fact that they were shifting Bethesda to mobile games and MMOs and making them make stupid spin-offs like Wolfenstein Youngblood, which I absolutely hate. I hate that game. And they were clearly looking for an exit. They were squeezing more out of the studio than they had been. Like Bethesda had that whole single player still matters, player one still matters, that whole campaign, and then swept it under the rug. The only person who could have made them do that is like the high executives or whatever. Microsoft like potentially saved them from that. So
yeah.
Um,
Stodgy Caesar says, "Would you read a Tro super chat though?" No, I'll never read anything that Zalker super chats. Sorry.
Paul Zucker.
I know, right? DMCR says, "Hey Jez, are you feeling better? And why don't they have AC where you are? No electricity, huh?"
Well, yes, I am feeling better. Like I had all these stomach problems for months and months and months, and they just went away at the start of December. So hallelujah about that, because that was very, very annoying few months of recovery. I had I had some sort of weird food poisoning in June, and like the recovery was so slow. Like I had like food poisoning for 3 weeks. The doctors didn't know exactly what it was. I had all these tests, and they're like, "Well, we think it's food poisoning, but you shouldn't be this ill from food poisoning." And then like, well, you shouldn't take this long to recover from food poisoning. So God knows what happened, but I survived apparently to live and blog another day. But yeah, thanks for the well wishes. And I forgot the other part of his question actually. I'm getting tired now. It's midnight.
Yeah, it's getting late. We went like 3 hours on this show because we missed two days or 2 weeks, and we're not going to be. Well, we're not having a podcast this week or next week. So yeah, it's going to be a while.
Shout out to Hazardor for the timestamping job on this one.
Yeah, the time. Well, I mean, there wasn't that many topics. We kind of went long on all of them, but there's a lot here to talk about. So, yeah, you know what? I think that'll probably be it for the show. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all have a very, very Merry Christmas and get all the presents that you want. Yeah, hit the like button, the sub button, notification bell. Follow me and Jez on Twitter. You know the drill. And we'll be back on January 8th. Hopefully 2021 starts out a lot better than 2020 did. Imagine like this time last year was when we first started hearing about COVID. I remember thinking to myself, that's not going to affect anything. And yeah, we were wrong all about that, huh? Jesus. Anyways.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm just like, I just want it to be over. I'm like, give me that vaccine. Slap it straight into my veins. I don't care if Bill Gates gets control of my mind. Just maybe this is the plan to bring Windows Phone back. Like if we can like inject everyone microchips and make them like Windows Phone, maybe we'll get it back. Maybe.
Yeah. So you want to say anything before we get out of here, Jez?
Well, first of all, Google, that last segment was a joke. Don't flag this podcast for conspiracy theories because that ain't what we're about. Finally, thanks to everyone for the support. It's been a crazy year for everyone. And even though we're going into 2021 in pretty much the same situation, I'm sure no one will look back fondly on 2020 as a year where nice things happened. But we survived it together, and this podcast will endure. Come rain or shine, we shall be here talking about Xbox and gaming.
Yep.
And
We'll
thanks
be
to you,
doing
Ren, as
another
well, for a
150
great year.
episodes, you know?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
All right, guys. Have a good holiday in the next couple of weeks, New Year's and Christmas. And we'll be back on the 8th. And, thank you for everything. And keep it gaming. Later.